All right. Let's see here. I think we're good to go. I think we got everything clean, and we're going to do a radio show here. And, maybe what I'll do is just for you, Mr. Apnea, when actually I don't have enough time to say, actually, maybe I'll have a bath like Miller and have a shave too. Here we go. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live and Revolution Radio. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free for you at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Christopher Penczak is a witch, teacher, writer, and healing practitioner. His practice draws upon the foundation of both modern and traditional witchcraft, blended with the wisdom of mystical traditions from across the globe. As a practitioner and a teacher of shamanism, tarot, Reiki healing, or Reiki, depends on how you want to pronounce it, herbalism, astrology, and the lovely Qabalah. He is the founder of the Temple of Witchcraft tradition and system of magical training based upon the material of his books and classes. He is an ordained minister primarily serving the New Hampshire and Massachusetts pagan and metaphysical communities through public rituals, private counsel, and teaching, though he travels extensively teaching throughout the United States. And we got him here tonight. His website, ChristopherPenczak.com. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, I will bring you the SOR Newswire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Mr. Christopher Penczak, first time on Spaced Out Radio. We are so glad to have you here. Thank you for sharing your evening with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
All right, be honest right off the bat. How much Eye of Newt do you use in your spells?
Well, Eye of Newt is actually code for juniper berries, and juniper berries are quite lovely for prosperity and money drawing incense, so I have a big jar of it.
Hey, look, the Simpsons can't be wrong on the Eye of Newt, especially during their Halloween specials. The
Simpsons are excellent prognosticators of the future. You know, they've told us a little bit too much of what's going to happen, so let's hope some of their other predictions happen as well. But, they're not really the best source for witchcraft.
Is that not the coolest thing, though? I mean, a lot of this stuff...
It's kind of amazing, actually.
Obviously they couldn't have known, okay, about certain things and the way things would happen, but cripes, they've been good. They've been really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazing.
Perhaps they have a witch on staff.
They have to. They have to. Christopher, let's learn a little bit about you, my friend, because there's probably many in our audience around North America who are not familiar with your work. Tell us all about you. How did you get into witchcraft?
I actually started as a skeptic, believe it or not. Who would have thought I'd end up where I am now? But I had a friend at the end of high school who introduced me to witchcraft, and I thought she was nuts. I thought she was crazy. She's, a very modern person, ran her own business. She was my art teacher from when I was like 7 years old to about 16, and a friend of the family. And back in those days, it was much more undercover than, it is today. So you didn't tell people you were a witch. You didn't want her business ruined. And particularly you didn't tell people who were under 18 because there was a sense of you don't want to be corrupting a minor type of thing. Because that's, the fear level that was around it at that time. And so once I graduated an all-boys Catholic school for high school, she started dropping hints. And then finally she was like, well, you figured it out, right? I'm a witch. And I just thought that was crazy. I just didn't have space for that in my worldview and my thought processes for it. So I thought she joined a cult. so I was trying to get her out of the cult, not realizing there's really no central authority. Nobody was trying to control anything for her. So she started giving me books, and she's like, I'll talk to you about this, but like we have no common vocabulary. So she started giving me books. She gave me books on quantum physics, and she gave me a book on Hermetic Qabalah, and then she gave me a book on witchcraft. And it was all interesting. And once we had some conversations, I'm like, okay, you're not in a cult, so what are you in? And she started inviting me to her coven, and had a chance to do a pretty interesting and amazing spell. I had a very good friend of mine who was a year behind me, still in Catholic high school, who happened to get pregnant. And she didn't tell any of her family, and she kept it under wraps. And I think she, had a bit of a nervous event, for herself. And so when she finally revealed it, she was, malnourished, and the baby was in the wrong position. There's all sorts of difficulties going on, and they thought that she was in great danger. And part of this healing work we did that night was, the mother be okay, the baby be okay. And this is why it's important to write down your spells and kind of look back on them later. The phrasing we used was, may the labor be as easy as possible. And in the few weeks from when we did the spell to when she gave birth, she was only in labor for 3 hours for her first pregnancy, and was up walking around and thought there was no problem, didn't understand why everyone was so concerned for her health. And when I heard that, something clicked in me of like, I'm sure people were praying for her, and I'm sure, there can be coincidence and such, but a 3-hour labor, like that just seems so weird to me. And that made me want to investigate more. So I ended up studying with this woman for a number of years. She taught me tarot. She invited me to her different groups. And then when she felt she taught me as much as she could, she brought me to her teacher, who was Lori Cabot, and she's known in America as the official witch of Salem, Massachusetts. And she has a tradition there, and I started studying with her, and had some profound experiences, and that sort of led me on this path.
When you were growing up, did you know anything about witchcraft? Did you think it was like the rest of us mainly think, with old, ratty old women with warts on their noses and their faces painted green and long, bony fingers with sharp fingernails on it, riding brooms at night? Geez, I know I'm explaining my former mother-in-law to a T here, but, that's the impression the majority of us get and think of when we think of witches.
Yeah, I definitely thought it was fantasy. I think, I was growing up a big sci-fi geek, so the idea of wizards and witches was always enticing. And once I got on the path, I could look back at my childhood and see some psychic experiences. But because you're kind of conditioned to not think of them as psychic or magical, you just think you're making it up, or you think you're having a delusion of some sort. So I didn't think it was something that was real, but I think I was enchanted by the idea. I was really fascinated as a kid with alchemy. And I really wanted to understand. If you, at that time, looked at history books about alchemy, you kind of get to this point where it intersects with medicine and holistic health and such. And then we discover chemistry, and everyone's like, and alchemy turned out not to be true, which in the end, when you really kind of study occultism, you realize that alchemy is very true. It's just a different set of principles. It's not the elements in terms of hydrogen and helium and things like that. It's more about energies within our bodies, and it's pretty close to a lot of things we think of in traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic Hindu medicine. But I didn't think of witchcraft as real. I thought that was kind of a fantasy stereotype, a mythology, something for Halloween. I didn't realize that there were people actually calling themselves witches. And they could be your neighbors. They could be people you've known for years. It was a real living thing. So I had that stereotype, and I think that's why I couldn't believe my friend was a witch, because she didn't look like a witch. She didn't talk like a witch. She had a day job. She had beautiful daughters. She ran a business, not realizing that that's what witches do today. It was much more underground at that time. And this is before all the TV shows. This is before Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This is before Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And, a lot of the things that brought the ideas of Wicca into kind of popular consciousness as people. When I was doing my training, I'd say maybe a few years into it is when the Craft movie came out. So at that time, that was the closest somewhat realish, depiction of it, which it really wasn't real, but there was enough bits and pieces in the words that I could be like, oh, I know where they got that from. But it was still kind of things of movies and TV and storybooks and Halloween. So it took me a while to kind of wrap my head around the idea that witchcraft was a real thing for real people.
Okay, so when you are at home and you're deciding this is the way you want to take your life, this is the way that you feel comfortable, this is who you are, this is what you want to be and what you want to profess, and this is what you want to stand for, Now, normally our parents think, well, maybe it's just a phase. The child is going through that teenage years and trying to find themselves and who they are. Every kid goes through it. Did your parents have any reservations about you wanting to be a witch?
Absolutely, but it was funny. My understanding of their point of view didn't become clear until many years later. So, they raised me Catholic, and, I come from a, kind of traditional Catholic family, went to school the whole time, and, had that kind of religious background to things. And I was deeply unhappy with it. I was a closeted gay man at the time, kind of coming to terms with what I believed and who I was, and I knew Catholicism wasn't it for me. And I guess I'd call myself agnostic at the time, and I was searching through Eastern mysticism, so I was looking into Buddhism and Hinduism, but it wasn't something at that time you could put into practice. Like, I didn't know any Buddhists to meditate with, or I didn't really know where a Hindu temple would be to go for these things. So I was just kind of trailing along, and when I got involved in this family friend, who my mother trusted the family friend, so I think when I was involved with her, she sort of just thought it as playing. But then when I started going to Salem, Massachusetts, and I had met my, serious teacher, Lori Cabot, and was a bit more involved and a bit more serious about it, I think my mom got nervous. The interesting part about it was she was super wise. She knew if she said, I was over 18 at the time, but I was still at home going to college, that if she forbid me to do it, of course I'd want to do it all the more. So she was like, well, tell me more about it. And she was like, let me read these books. And when I went for my first kind of serious long-term class, she's like, I think I'm going to take it with you. This sounds interesting. And years later, I found out she was taking it because she thought I was joining a cult. And she was like, I want to be there next to you for something bad happens. I'm going to pull you out. I'm going to get you out of it. But as she kind of went through it, she realized, like, it was so empowering for her. It had a lot of the ritual that she liked about Catholicism, but it circumnavigated a lot of the dogma and institutions of having to go to a priest or, having to support community that you felt was, at that time, a lot of the church sex abuse scandal stuff was coming out. So not feeling comfortable, how the church was handling that, but still really having that kind of ritualistic faith, really being devoted to Mary. Well, here in witchcraft, it was really deeply devoted to a goddess. So she ended up leaving Catholicism to be a witch with me, which my dad wasn't a super Catholic. I mean, I think he was that kind of culturally because that's how he was raised. But he at first thought we were just playing. Even when my mother got deeply involved in it, he thought she was sort of playing. And then for a little bit, he had some difficulty, and there's a little bit of ridicule of like, this is ridiculous. Why would you do this? And then he had a problem at work. And so when he had this problem at work, he had a particular supervisor that was very difficult for, summing up a short story. And so he asked for help for that. And so my mother and I did a spell to resolve the situation. And the very next day from when we did the spell, they both got a transfer to two different departments. So they were no longer working together. And for the whole time until my father retired, they stayed in different departments. And when they finally kind of came back together, they came back together on the same level. So they actually formed a friendship. But the immediacy of how the magic and the witchcraft worked was really impressive, I think, for my dad. And then he wanted to know more, and he became much more supportive about it. And he never actually became a witch, but he's still to this day very supportive. We moved and formed our temple back in the town that I grew up in, and he still lives there. And he's been incredibly supportive. He comes to our events to be supportive. And when we went before the town board to get our town planning, our building permits and things like that settled, he came out and spoke on our behalf, and he knew a lot of the people in the town because he's lived here all his life. So he's been incredibly supportive as the journey has gone on. And for me, I feel like
hold on a second. You have convinced your parents to become witches as well?
I've convinced my mother. My mother's passed now, but she was a witch until she passed. And
God bless you for
years. And my dad is really, I'd say my dad's very open. I think my process into witchcraft opened him up to, he spent a significant portion of his life in Asia. And I think this opened him up to a lot more of Eastern metaphysics. So I don't think he claims any label for anything, but he's deeply involved in a Chinese medicine group that does a lot of energy work and social services. And Yeah, he's very open to anything. We can talk about anything metaphysical or magical or spiritual, and he's got a deeply open mind. And I think he still does his Catholic prayers, but I don't think he sees it as exclusive to anything.
Right.
And he's definitely not necessarily devoted to the institution of Catholicism. He just likes the prayers.
Isn't it great when your parents finally accept that? That you may not have turned out the way that they expected, but the fact that they're willing to change their entire religion to learn what you're all about as their child, that's damn progressive, man.
Yeah, they're amazing. I've been very, very blessed. My mom, looked at it as all the things that were important to her for religion were in witchcraft. There was a feminine, there was this sense of nature being sacred, there was the sense that she could hold mass, not that we call it mass, but she could hold mass, she didn't have to go to a priest, that cooking was sacred, that her kitchen was her temple. She's just like, this is all the things I like about Catholicism and much more. So it really kind of showed her what the essence of religion was and how she could do it herself and not have to rely necessarily on an institution or a man. She could do it for herself. So, yeah, I have been so blessed through the whole process of becoming a writer. They're super supportive of that. Right on their coffee table, they have lots of my books. So, imagine having your friends over and having your son's, Temple of Witchcraft books on the coffee table for people to look at. And I have one book called Gay Witchcraft, and, they have that out proudly displayed too. And they've been super supportive of my partners. And, yeah, so I realize I'm very blessed. And I'm very thankful for that. So it's a beautiful thing.
I do have to ask, okay, is there a difference between witchcraft and gay witchcraft?
Well, that's an interesting point. So the modern witchcraft revival, as we look at it today, kind of became public in the 1950s or so.
Right.
And the first traditions and the first lines of Wicca and witchcraft were very heterosexist in a lot of people's minds. There was a lot of emphasis on polarity between male and female. Some groups required an equal number of men and women to it. And there's a lot of imagery of the mysteries of being the union and the sexuality between the goddess and the god, which I'm okay with, and I have no problem with that. I think that's, a source of life and, a fact of life. The problem can become is that, some of those groups felt you couldn't embody that if you were queer on any level, or if you were trans, or if you were what we call non-binary today. And some of them would force you to choose a gender and choose the gender or to act in that way in the ritual spaces in the way that they perceived you, and not always have the choice in the way you perceived yourself or the fluidity in the way you perceive yourself. And a lot of them really focused on those traditional mythologies, and there's a whole host of mythology and history in occultism and even history in Wicca as it's grown from the 50s to the 2000s now of gay practitioners. But a lot of people don't teach it. A lot of people don't emphasize it or think it's wrong. I was really blessed because the community I trained in Salem didn't have any of those emphases, didn't have any of those prejudices. My first classes I was, probably 19 at the time and still fairly closeted, and saw an openly gay man in my class, an openly lesbian woman in my class, and I knew that they were welcome. It was only when I left Salem, Massachusetts, that I encountered witchcraft groups that didn't see the type of magic I was doing as valid, because it wasn't one straight man and one straight woman coming together to be priest and priestess in a kind of balanced group, with equal sexes that all identified, at least energetically, as straight. So that kind of gave me my impetus to start studying and to try to understand the history, and has it always been that way, and find some really amazing myths that include bisexuality and transgenderism and queerness. And try to include that. And a lot of the book that I wrote about, too, was also talking to other practitioners of how did they navigate it. Those who learned in those circles that were heteronormative, how did they navigate it, and what traditions did they come up with, and how did they look at witchcraft. So gay witchcraft was really kind of my own personal research of myself and other people and how they handled those questions and the way they worked their magic, wanting to share it with the world.
That is actually quite cool. Thank you for sharing that, man.
Thank you.
No, that is fantastic. Christopher Penczak is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We got about 4.5 minutes here before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour, Christopher. And, being gay, being a witch, being that you have an environment that is, more so the witchcraft than being gay these days, but that is still quite kind of taboo. Now, how do you blend a natural lifestyle with the religion of Wicca?
Well, the essence of it is in how you live.
Right.
It's interesting to your perception of it, of being the witchcraft being more taboo. I actually came out as a witch to all my friends and family before I came out as gay. So the acceptedness of being gay now has definitely transitioned. So that is an interesting point, and even to the point where a lot of people feel that gay people have become dominant in witchcraft, which I don't know if that's true or not, but I think we're definitely vocal. But you just kind of live your life. A lot of witchcraft is about observing the seasons, is about being in the present moment, is about feeling the energies, whatever those things are. So gay, straight, otherwise, it's just kind of being in those presences. But I do realize I'm somewhat of a controversial figure. On top of that, I'm also polyamorous, so I have 2 husbands. Which I know is a difficult thing for a lot of people to swallow. Like, can't you just take one normal thing? You've got these 3 things that kind of put you outside of
so
now
you're sitting in Utah.
People's understandings.
Now you're sitting in Utah.
Not quite polygamy, but yeah.
My goodness.
And it's that idea that, witches were always edge walkers. Witches were always on the edge of the village. That witches were never really the normal accepted people. And it's that otherness that gives us a perspective that also helps us help other people, because we don't judge. For the most part, we have a sense of, you feel that your otherness, or you feel like you've done something taboo. Who are we to say, that that's wrong? We'll just listen to your story, and if we can help you, we can help you.
That is awesome. And, for you to live the way you want, a lot of people on this planet do not get that opportunity to do so, whether it's because of religion, faith, sexual orientation, the governments that they live under. You must feel pretty blessed.
I am incredibly blessed on a multitude of levels, and I feel like a lot of my social service work and working through a temple and teaching people and everything is trying to kind of pay that back. I know not everybody gets that support, and so if I can offer support, if I can offer education, that's been a big part of my mission, because I know just even having friends and students and people in my sphere that have so many more difficulties because their parents weren't supportive of who they were, or their communities were not supportive of who they were. We still, have problems here and there. There's loving people in our community that have accepted them having a Temple of Witchcraft in their midst, and there's others that are not so happy about it. But, we still try to be good neighbors, and, whether they like us or not, we're here.
Do you ever scare people with your brooms that are anti-witchery? Be honest. Honest.
The broom is not...
Because I totally would.
It's a big factor for me, but we do, some people find our space scary. I don't particularly think of it scary, but, we have different deity statues. We've got a big goddess statue in one of our gardens you can see from the street. And at the moment, we have some fun Halloween decorations, but people are like, what does that mean? I'm like, you can get these at, the local department store. It's not anything specific to witchcraft, but I guess they frighten some people. We have a big dragon on our roof right now. So, what can you do, though? It's in the end, I try not to frighten people. But if someone is frightened by something that they don't understand and they don't want to ask a question, or they don't want to be, I'm pretty open about everything, and I'm pretty friendly and welcoming. So if people want to, be scared, that's their story and that's their issue. I remember taking a long time ago a class on the Bhagavad Gita, and it was part of a yoga program at a yoga studio I was going to, and it was like a discussion group, and how do you bring your religion to the studies. And in the end, I had a woman stand up in the middle of it, and she pointed to me like it was the witchcraft trial. And she's like, is anyone here, really disturbed that we have a witch in our midst? And the teacher had known me for years and knew, where I was coming from. And it was just so startling to me, because I couldn't fathom that in this day and age, and this was still maybe 15 years ago, but she, was almost accusing me like the Scarlet Letter or the witchcraft trial. So there's a witch in our midst. Do you know that? We have to do something.
You are so bad, man. You are so bad. But you know what? We're gonna.
You're so a good friend after a while.
You're so bad. You're going to be here for another 2 hours. Christopher Penczak is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Already loving this one on the mighty SOR. Stay tuned. More with Christopher Penczak on Spaced Out Radio next. And we're clear. That was a quick half hour, man.
That was.
Look at you with your own harem. Damn you.
Yeah, it was not something I would have consciously chose, but life evolves in the way it does, and you fall in love, and it works out.
Yes.
I usually don't tell people to aim to be polyamorous because I feel like that sometimes is difficult. But I think if it happens to you, it can be beautiful.
All right. Well, you know what? God bless you for it, man. Seriously. I think everybody out there is like, damn, I'm jealous right now. Damn monogamy.
Usually through the jealousy or anger.
Damn monogamy. There we go. Oh, man. So New Hampshire, eh? You guys must be having a nice fall and getting ready for the old winter pretty quick here then, eh?
We are. It is super beautiful right now. Probably for the next month or so, the leaves will be changing. It'll be pretty beautiful. We just had our first frost last night, so I'm going to try to get in the last of my herbal harvest this weekend for anything that's not dead yet. But yeah, it's been pretty beautiful. I'm very blessed to live in this place too. You know, I'm about an hour from the beach. I'm about an hour from Boston. I'm about an hour from the mountains. So it's a good midpoint to be at.
We're scheduled here to get snow this weekend. Hold on, I'm going to check the.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't snow that early.
Weather for 1-8. Hold on. God damn it. In 108. There I am. Hold on. What is my weather like here? Because apparently. Oh, yes. Okay. The snow's going to hold off until Tuesday, apparently. It's going to hold off until Tuesday.
Yipe.
Yeah. You know, it's a balmy and shorts
December.
wearing 54 degrees Fahrenheit here right now, 12 Celsius.
Oh.
Still T-shirt weather. I'm sticking with that.
Excellent. So I remember last year for Canadian Thanksgiving, I was in the Montreal area teaching for a witchcraft group up in Montreal.
Oh, nice.
So I forgot it was Thanksgiving this weekend. Yeah, I teach up in Montreal fairly often.
I've never been. I want to go.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's like a little snippet of Europe, but not having to get on a plane.
How much?
At least for me.
How much poutine have you eaten?
I am not a big fan of poutine. Every time I'm out there, they're like, "You have to have some," but yeah.
How can you not be a fan of poutine? Honestly, this fucking interview is over, man. It's over.
Oh.
Okay.
I know. I've crossed the line for Canada.
All right. Hey, quick question for you, man. Quick question. Because our audience wants to know this. All right. What's your thoughts on eating breakfast foods for dinner?
I love it.
Oh. First you hate poutine, now you eat breakfast for dinner.
Have I crossed another line?
Oh, I got to throw a shoe at you. If I knew you wouldn't curse me or something, I'd throw a shoe at you right now. I would.
You have far to travel. It would have very far to travel.
Yeah.
Are you against breakfast for dinner?
Yeah, hate it. Disgusting. Horrible.
Wow.
Horrible.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, breakfast foods are for breakfast. That's why they're called breakfast foods. Cereal, pancakes, okay, everything but bacon. Bacon's universal. All right. Remember, okay.
So you'll make an exception for bacon.
It's universal. It's like blood, man. It's like O positive blood. Can feed everybody.
Mm-hmm. Except for our vegans.
Well, even the vegans cheat. Are you vegan, by the way?
I'm not vegan. Nope, I'm a carnivore.
All right, good for you. Thank you for that. You're back in my good books now. You know what pisses me off about the vegans? And some of them are good people. Okay, some of them are. But it pisses me off when they try to name everything after real food, like burgers. You can't have a vegan burger. There's no such thing. You know what I'm saying? No such thing. You can't have vegan chicken breasts or vegan ice cream or anything like that. You can't.
Tofurkey.
Yeah, exactly. Tofurkey and all that garbage. All right. Hey, that's terrible. Terrible. All right. We've got 30 seconds here. God, we're going to have fun tonight, bro. We're so going to have fun tonight. Uh, all right. Thank you to Kimberly for kicking off the super chat tonight. Big thumbs up if you are new to the show. Thank you so much for coming on in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so you know when we're going to go to air here and do a little shopping at the SOR Vault soon. Very soon. We are going to have a brand new store coming at you. Here we go with the second half hour. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. I'm Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. That way you can stay all caught up. We got our archives for free. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. And, yeah, I think that's about it. Because I mentioned Twitter and Instagram. Let's just get to the guests. What the heck? You know, we got the guy who loves Eye of Newt more than anything. We got Christopher Penczak tonight. He's a witch out of New Hampshire, and he's teaching us all about it tonight. I got to tell you, this guy is a lot of fun. This is one of those shows I can already tell, even though we're 30 minutes in, that you're going to have to listen to the archives on this one because he's a knowledgeable young man who is here to teach us all about it. Christopher's website is christopherpenczak.com. You can Google him. He's all over the place. Got some great books out on his website, on Amazon as well. Christopher, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. You're forgetting the wing of bat. Those are holly leaves, and, we use them for dream magic.
Sure you do. Wing of bat. Wing of bat.
Because the little holly leaves, they look a little like, bat wings. So I have newt, wing of bat, got all the animals.
Isn't that like being vegan witchcraft?
Well, there's this belief that it was in code. So you don't want to reveal your formulas, or you don't want to let people who, may persecute you or go through your stuff or take you away during inquisitional times to know exactly what you're doing. So it was almost like kind of a secret code of you taught to your apprentices of, what to use and how to mix it. We still have a lot of plants that have animal names, like even in a botanical level. Like there's things like deer's tongue, and that's the common name for something, but it's still a plant.
Deer's tongue.
Deer's tongue, yep. Little leaves that supposedly look like deer's tongue, where it gets its name. But it smells really good. It's used in a formula called master oil, which can be used to master a situation or master yourself, or if you're trying to learn something new, you apply the master oil before you try to do it, whether it be like a musical instrument or public speaking or anything like that. But the deer's tongue gives you a greater control over things.
Gotcha. Makes no sense to me, but if you say it is, I'm going to take your word for it. Because I think you're a vegan witch, to be absolutely honest here. Vegan Witchcraft tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Now I'm going to have to change the title on everything. You know that.
Well, at heart of hearts, I'm a carnivore, but use what works.
All right. I can settle with that. Hey, and I'm really appreciative that you're here, my friend. For a lot of people who may not understand what witchcraft is, what is it exactly? Is it something that we need to fear because we've been taught to fear it for so long?
That is a really great question, and I make the joke when I teach, if you ask 10 witches what witchcraft is, you'll get 14 answers. It's such a personal path and such a personal experience. It's hard to sum it up in a way that sums it up for everybody. But one of my earliest teachers had a good definition. I tend to use that definition to start with people. She defined witchcraft as an art, a science, and a religion. And I had a hard time with all three of those at various times in my path. But the more I practice, the more I realize it's really like a braid and cord, and it really is all three of those things. It's not, I don't want to say it's something that people should fear in the sense that most witches are just living their lives and, have their own problems and their own hopes and their own dreams. And just like there's no particular reason to fear a Christian. There's really no particular reason to fear anybody of a specific religious or spiritual path unless that person is out to get you particularly, as any harm for you. But most witches who have a grudge or an argument, in terms of our ethical codes and moral codes. Just because you piss somebody off doesn't mean that they're going to do a spell, towards you or against you. So I don't think witchcraft is something that the average person needs to fear. I think actually the people who need to fear witchcraft are actually the practitioners of it. Because a lot of people pick up a book about witchcraft and they think, oh, this is super easy, or this is going to make my life better. And any book that tells you that witchcraft isn't dangerous for the witch, I'd always look out for. Because witchcraft is really about changing yourself and through that changing the world. And when we try to do that, we often think we're clear and we often think we know what we want. And sometimes the learning process is those things backfire. And you got what you asked for, but not really what you wanted, or you didn't quite get what you asked for because you didn't ask it in the right way and you didn't use the right kind of alignments with things. So I do think witchcraft is dangerous. I do think witchcraft, is an assumption of power, but I think it's a lot like electricity. It's neither inherently good or evil. It doesn't have a morality to it, but it's how the person who's using it applies it. So a lot of modern witchcraft has particular ethics, like the branches of witchcraft that are known as Wicca, which some people think of as kind of the modern revival of the religion of witchcraft. But there's a lot of branches that don't call themselves Wicca. But those that do have something called the Wiccan Rede. And in the Wiccan Rede, it basically gets summed up as do as you will and harm none. So this idea that you can do whatever you want, you have to accept the responsibilities of what you do. And the general guideline, or read is good advice. It's not a law, it's not an oath, but it's good advice, is harm none, because we actually believe everything has consequence. Some people call it the law of three and say whatever you do comes back to you 3 times strong. Other traditions say for whatever you do, you have to pay the coin, which basically means you have to pay the consequence of what that action is. A lot of people have movie magic ideas of things and think, oh, if you do something to gain, good luck in it, then you're going to have equal amounts of bad luck, or someone else is going to have bad luck. It doesn't work that way. But it just does mean that, you really have to weigh the consequences of everything. But, that's true for all of us, right? Like if you're living anything in your life, if you're taking any actions in the world, if you're in charge of people at work, if you're, running a family, you have to realize that your actions have consequence, that the words that you say and the things that you do can harm you, can harm other people. So you try to be as careful as you can and try not to hurt anybody intentionally, and really try to avoid situations where you can hurt people unintentionally. So, I don't think you have to worry about it if you're not involved in it. Your neighbors are not coming to get you with the witchcraft who might be witches. That really comes from a scapegoating history. Whenever something goes bad in a community, in a society, in a nation, people are always looking for someone to blame. So in the rise of institutional Christianity, they would look and try to convert people from the older pagan religions. And those who wouldn't convert, or those that they perceived that wouldn't convert, or even just the people they didn't like that might have mental health issues or just not fit in, kind of get painted with the malicious witch archetype that's kind of grown into Halloween. And a lot of the stuff you were talking about, the crone image that, is the bony fingers and the riding around on the broom and the green skin and all that. And as you start to dissect that historically, you realize, well, that was not something that witches and pagans embraced, but it was something that was kind of cast upon them. And you can find the same kind of accusations to any minority that has not done well in a society. So in times and places where Jews were persecuted, they got a lot of the same kind of imagery and accusations that witches get. And then when Christians were a minority, Christians got those same accusations. And when Christians became the majority, the remaining pagans, had that. But the idea of desecrating graves or eating babies or doing malicious things in the night that other people couldn't see that would cause misfortune, that's the fear kind of coming out. And particularly in Europe, when we had the experience of feudalism and the Black Plague and the Dark Ages, they're looking for a scapegoat. So the witch kind of grew to be that archetype of the scapegoat. People were doing evil. They were servants of the devil. Most witches today don't believe in the devil in the Christian context of it. We believe in different gods and goddesses and tend to venerate the goddess of the earth and the goddess of the moon, kind of foremost around, any of the other deities, but we don't have a satanic figure in the way that Christians do. When people say, are you a Satanist? I'm like, well, to be a Satanist, first you have to be in the kind of Judeo-Christian paradigm. We don't have that. We look at our roots as predating that. So we're really about the spirits of the land, the spirits of the stars, the moon, the sun, and the various seasons. So it's not something that I think you really have to worry about, but I think, witches actually have to worry about that because we're often the ones that are scapegoated. So like that woman in my yoga class saying, there's a witch in our midst. There's something, she was fearful that I was going to do something to her because that was the way she perceived witchcraft. And it took the whole year for her to get, the idea that I was a nice guy, that here I was in the spirituality and religion class, that, I serve my community, that I have friends, that I have family, I have parents, I have all the normal things that she has. And by the end of the year, we got to be friends. But it took a lot of work and a willingness on both our parts to kind of share ourselves. And that's hard to do if somebody in that formula doesn't want to share, doesn't want to be open, or doesn't want to ask a question.
When you look at spells, I think this is where people get a lot confused because we're not sure. Do they work? Do they not? How can you tell? When you go through everything with the spells, how real are they?
That's a great question. And the idea of it is, real for who and real on what level. There's some spells that are definitely affecting the internal world of the witch, so there's no measurable way I can tell you or prove to you that it worked. And a lot of spells and magic, it's not the movement of lightning in your fingertips. We all would wish that on some days, but when you start to realize the enormity of that responsibility, I really don't wish to have that type of power because, we all have tempers, we all have, bad days. Most spells manifest through synchronicity. So a lot of times someone who's a skeptic, and I started as a skeptic, so this is my argument for it, that wasn't a spell, that just happened. That was just a coincidence. But most spells line up improbable coincidences. And as you do this as a path, as you do this as a practice, if you keep track and, you're pretty observant and you go back and look at your old spells and you just are aware in your life, which is a big part of it, you start to realize just the sheer level of coincidences you have, can't be random chance. And a witch who's been practicing for a fairly long time, you start to expect coincidence and synchronicity to go your way when you've set it up through magic and spells. And when it doesn't, you can often be surprised. And when it doesn't, that's also part of the spiritual path too, because you might have cast the spell wrong. It might have been out of alignment with what your soul wants. Magic in its essence and spells as an expression of magic are really about soul crafting. There's something your personality wants, your little desire, and there's something your soul wants, what we call your true will. And the best magic is when you can get those two things to be the same. And when those two things are the same, they align. And anything, I think, is possible at that point. But if you can't get them to align, then there's a lot of frustration and a lot of working out. So if I do a spell and it happens, then I was in alignment pretty clearly. If I do a spell and it doesn't happen, then I have to examine, did I do it wrong? Did I pick the wrong time? Did I pick the wrong method? Did I not have a clarity of intention? Did I not want it strong enough? But if all those things were good and the spell still doesn't work, if you repeat a spell a few times, then you have to start thinking, is this not in alignment with my soul? And if my soul's kind of protecting me from my personality getting what it wants, why do I want it? And I have to kind of examine the reasons, what's deficient in me that I feel that I need something. And can I resolve the desire, or can I resolve the resistance to the success, and move through it? But with each spell, you move a little bit more closer to your soul's purpose. And then after a while, you start to realize that, magic isn't just something you do on the night of the full moon, but every thought you think, every word you speak, every action you take, whether you're in ritual, whether you're shopping in the supermarket, is a part of the spell of your life. Everything's a ritual, and it's about being as present with that. There's got to be magic to my interaction with my cashier at the market, as much as that there's magic to when I'm harvesting poisonous plants in my garden, to as much as there's when I'm chanting under the full moon in the forest. All those things are magic. But if I can't see the magic in the supermarket, I'm not really practicing the magic very deeply under the full moon.
All right. What's that like, practicing magic under the full moon? Because, that, not, and I'm not trying to say this to be rude or crass, but it sounds so stereotypical.
Yeah, I can understand that. I will tell you, from that skeptical mode of where I began, I thought a lot of the stereotypical practices were ridiculous. When I first got involved in it, the things that I really latched onto were the cerebral. So I really loved the meditation. I really loved the history. I really loved the philosophy. But the first time I had to, go out under the full moon in a black robe, I thought that was ridiculous. And so my teacher, had guest robes for people who were coming to the coven because, most people didn't own their own robes, or I'm putting on, this guest robe to go out there. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. Why would I do that? And then you start to learn more of the understanding of, I hate to use the word psychology of it because people assume psychology means it's not real, but even the root word of psychology is psyche, and that's the Greek word for soul. So there's ways that trigger things in our psychology to get us more receptive for an experience. So the idea of taking off your mundane clothes and putting on something special that you only do for a witchcraft ceremony kind of triggers your consciousness to think, this is a different time. This is a different space. This is not me just kind of sitting around watching TV. I'm going to go do something special. So it's kind of like, dressing up for Sunday service type of thing. And then getting out of your everyday stuff. Like, it's not every night that we go out into the woods under the full moon. But when you do, you're kind of setting yourself up to be in a special place, to be in a time between. When you start looking at the philosophies and the metaphysics underneath it, well, the moon pulls bodies of water. It controls our tides. And if you've ever done any type of social service work or any type of medical work, the full moon is when, people are unbalanced, come out, and the imbalances are triggered. But it's also the time from a metaphysical point of view that the moon pulls upon your astral body, and it makes it larger and it makes it energized. That's why a lot of people can't sleep during the full moon. They've got too much energy. The brightness of the moon's bothering them, but it's a psychic phenomenon. And so if you want extra power to make something happen, the full moon is a great time to do it because it's just flowing so freely. Could you do the magic on another night? Absolutely. But you might be more exhausted from it, or it might take more effort, or it might not work as well. But if you're trying to make something happen, the full moon is a great night to make something happen, even though it seems like that stereotype. And all the things that are stereotypes, you can list any trope from witchcraft and wizardry and all that type of work and say, what does that mean? And there's usually a reason behind it. So, like the wand, carrying a wand and casting spells with the wand, each wood has its own vitality and has its own vibration and has its own spirit to it. So you might pick, a yew wand if you wanted to do work to speak to the dead. And you might pick a willow wand or an apple wand if you wanted to work with the fairy spirits. Or you might pick an oak wand if you wanted to have more success in your job. And each one will bring a different vibration to it. Even the idea of the stereotype of the broom. We have kind of this image of the modern broom, but the traditional witch's broom was made out of a handle of ash wood, and ash wood was considered to be the world's tree. It was the center of the universe. And then it had birch twigs, and birch twigs were cleansing and purifying, and it was wrapped by willow around it to keep it all together. And willow was the doorway and the opening to the other world. So when you danced with a broom, you were literally opening the veil to the place between. You were getting centered in the universe. You were casting protection and purification. If there's anything bad there, you're literally sweeping away the bad energy, the bad vibes, and you could kind of come into that space. And even the way people would use the broom, the idea of riding the broom and flying through the heavens, it seems ridiculous to us. But imagine sitting, on the ground under the moon or in a ritual space and essentially having the broom between your legs. The oldest wood carvings have the bristles going forward, not behind us. Today we have almost this rocket view of the broom. That's the jet, to the rocket. But the traditional view was either it'd be a pitchfork or it'd be a broom, but the business, that's active of it would be up top, would be in front of you. And it was almost like a hobby horse. It was almost like, a children's toy of a chariot or a mount of some sort. And when you were under the moon with your eyes closed and holding on to it, it was like you were riding a horse, you were riding the broom, you were riding a bull, you were riding a goat, and you were going into the spirit world. So it was like your vehicle to safely get in and your vehicle to safely get out. And it may sound ridiculous if you've not had the experience of it, but when you have the experience of it, it feels like you're riding something under that, and it feels like it's protecting you and guiding you and bringing you into this experience. So, whether it has to be broom shape or not, nope. I know people have done pitchforks. I know people do staves. I know people do a forked staff. It's called a stang. So some people use a stang, but it has a purpose in the rituals just as much as, let's say, a Tibetan Buddhist, sand painting. Every little symbol has a meaning to it. Or, Catholic Mass, even if you don't feel connected to it personally, there was an original meaning behind everything in, Catholic Mass. And I think that's true with all our religious ceremonies. Just ours have been turned into Halloween stereotypes. For most other people, we think of it as a recognized religion. And I think that's why a lot of witches use the word religion, is because we do want to have the same level of protections, legally. If, you're in a place that you can't get fired for your religious beliefs, then we want that as well, too, because this is part of our spiritual path. But I think as long as people think of it as something to do with the movies only, we're not going to have a place in society. And it's not that we necessarily want to control anything in society, but I think our voice would be helpful, because I think our voice is also the voice that helps speak for the land, and helps speak for nature, and helps speak for that way of balance. So a lot of witches are doing a lot of work to try to integrate, where we fit in society without trying to water down our traditions, because we know our traditions can be scary, but at the same time, we don't try to water down that fear, because where there's fear, there's power, is one of the old sayings. So if something frightens you, you can draw up that power. But more often than not, it's something that frightens the witch, as well as it might frighten the person who doesn't understand it. But it's kind of being in that place of the taboo that generates the power. So, we know it's weird to go in the forest at midnight, but there's also a power of being, in the forest at midnight, because most other people wouldn't. And that helps generate the current for our magic and for our spiritual evolution.
Why don't you call yourself a warlock? Why a witch?
That is a great question too. You're.
Oh no, that one's from that one's from Corns, the booking guy. I cannot take credit for that one.
All right, yeah. There's some classic ones out there, so I think that's great. So there's actually a revival in our community of some male witches that are looking to reclaim the word warlock. So that's actually a controversial point in our community right now. So the old answer that anyone probably would have given you 10 years ago is that the most commonly accepted translation of warlock is oathbreaker. And so male witches, witch was a unisex term. It goes back to the Anglo-Saxon of, we say Wicca today, but it'd be witcha or witchy. And the witchas were actually the male witches, and the witchies were the female witches. But, as we get into modern English, it just became witch. So we think of witch as a unisexual term. But warlock came out, and there's great speculation on, was it because those male witches were betraying their sex, were betraying the church, were betraying their community? But warlock became associated etymologically with oathbreaker. So we don't want to be an oathbreaker. Although some would say a warlock was a witch that was cast out of their coven, that they broke their oath to their coven. But a lot of new research has come out where people are challenging, those translations and that acceptedness to it, because so much of our history is through the lens of Christian persecutions. So what can you really trust in that? So there's new research that people are putting forward that the word warlock goes back to Volund, which was almost like a Norse necromantic singer, someone who sang to the dead to rise up the ancestors. So many people think that could be the actual root of warlock. So I'm kind of split on that. I feel like if my brothers in the craft want to call themselves warlock, I think that's their business. But I was really taught in a tradition that warlock was not a word that we used in a good way. So I always kind of embrace the word witchcraft, and I think of it, the practice of it is witchcraft. It's not warlock craft. So I like to embrace the word witch.
Do you wear a pointy hat? I would.
For some costume balls I've had, it's not quite pointy in the classical image of it, but the idea of the hat as a sacred vestment. And often you would cover your head in certain rituals if you were kind of saying to the spirit world, I just want to observe, I don't want to participate. And you find that in a lot of African traditions as well. Like if you go to a voodoo ceremony or a Santeria or Ifa ceremony, if you wear a head covering, you're saying, I want the spirits to leave me alone. And if you uncover your head, you're saying, I'm open to receive something from the spirits.
Right.
So there's different times for it.
Christopher, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break at the top of the hour. I am loving this conversation with our guest tonight, Christopher Penczak. We'll take your questions in hour number 2. Remember to type them in capital letters if you are in one of our chat rooms or on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. Christopher Penczak, his website, ChristopherPenczak.com. You can find all his books there, his services, his schedules, his events, and even some Eye of Newt at his website. More with Christopher on Spaced Out Radio coming up right after this. I'm having a lot of fun tonight. Thank you, man.
Me too. It's been a good interview. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I'm just going to step away, take my dogs outside. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay, no problem.
SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of your day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is the paranormal lawyer Michael W. Hall. I'd like to invite you to listen in each Sunday night where we're going to open up your eyes to everything strange and paranormal. I will be hosting some great guests with topics that affect us all, such as UFOs, ghosts, and everything paranormal. Let's learn together on Spaced Out Radio Sunday with myself, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer at spacedoutradio.com.
I'm feeling a little spicy tonight. What to do? What to do?
Why not get Bumblefuck?
4 million Scoville units of pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauces come in 3 flavors. The burning Bumble. Tone it down a bit with Bumblicious and throw the sauce on everything.
Spice it up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajans.com.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother Is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother Is Watching.
The party is always on at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is where you want to be when visiting Canada's West Coast. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the best rated food in the city. The menu starts at $6.95. Why party anywhere else in Vancouver when the Moose is right there? Get your horns up and rock with the Moose, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org.
All right, man, I'm back.
All right, me too.
Yeah, well, let's continue on a good conversation here. As we got just under 2 minutes here.
Okay, no problem.
Mm-hmm. I'm having fun, man. Thank you.
Me too. I have to say, when I was told it was 2 hours, I was like, but this has been perfect. Really, really good flow to it. Really good pace. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, man. You're a great speaker. Just keep it on up. Don't screw up now, man. Don't screw up now. You're making me look good.
The pressure. So what kind of dogs do you have?
I got a German Shepherd and a German Shepherd Lab cross.
That is awesome. We used to have German Shepherds when I was growing up. They're the best. I love them.
Yeah. I like them too.
At the moment, because we have so many meditation classes at the house, it's been difficult to have pets. But I hope one day when we can move the classes, we're building a community center. So I'm trying to get the classes to the community center, and then we can have kind of a normal house life again.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
All right, we got about 45 seconds.
Okay.
I have no idea where we're going with this next hour, but let's just run with it. How about that?
I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, so far so good. You're all right in my books. All right.
Thank you. Likewise.
Even though you're a vegan witch. But, I mean, you could use that. You could get T-shirts made of that now. Vegan witch.
There are actually vegan witches out there that would claim that and would, question my credentials because they know I'm not vegan.
All right, guys, here comes hour number 2. Thanks to Science Bob and Kimberly for the super chats. We really do appreciate it. Here we go.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. Thank you so much for tuning us in. I am your host, Dave Scott. We really do appreciate you tuning in and giving us your listening ears. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live and Revolution Radio. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Obedible. Obedible is your password. Nobody knows what it means, but the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Tonight we are talking with Master of Witchcraft, Christopher Penczak. He's a vegan witch, if there is such a thing. I got to tell you, we are having such a great time with Christopher. I can't even keep a straight face right now because I am having so much fun, and I love it when we can have this much fun doing these shows. And Christopher's website is ChristopherPenczak.com. You can check out all of his books there. This guy is really knowledgeable. We're lucky to have him here. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you so much. And I'm not a vegan witch because there's going to be people who are going to be upset saying that. So I'm a carnivore witch.
All right. Either way. Oh, man. Anyways, Christopher, right before the break we asked you why you weren't a warlock, but you're a witch instead, and it's because you're a vegan witch. No, seriously, though. Tell us about the Temple of Witchcraft. What is this all about?
The Temple of Witchcraft is a nonprofit in New England that we founded. So we technically have the same legal status as a church, which I know for a lot of people that can sound really weird. Why do the witches need a church? But part of it is for that legal protection that I was talking about, that we come from a minority spiritual path or a minority religion, and to be able to have some shared resources. It's also interesting that, we're this very land-based, nature-based tradition, yet very few resources are available for witches. A lot of times the way that the tradition was passed was in a very small coven. So there'd be from 3 to 13 people, and usually they'd meet at someone's house. And then, people hive off from that and grow their own groups. But, the centers where we learned, the witch houses is what I like to call them. Usually if the person gets older, they sell it or they retire or their family takes it over and they're not witches or not deeply involved in it, there's really no community center. There's nothing that outlives a generation. So a lot of us are trying to do work to change that. So to be able to create places that can build power over time, places that can be our sacred spaces. Often we're renting from other places to be able to do public rituals. So to be able to have a place that can be multi-generational is really important to us. So in my own work, how I kind of got into doing this professionally and teaching from the skeptic side of things and kind of embracing it from my life, I ended up teaching classes because I had a vision, of a goddess. And this goddess that I worked with and had great communication with, she started showing up on meditation. So, you need to teach more. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to teach. At the time, believe it or not, I wanted to be a rock star. My degree is in classical voice, and I was working at a studio in Boston, and I had all these hopes and dreams to be a singer-songwriter. And it just wasn't, working out at that point. And so I finally said in the meditation, okay, after 4 or 5 times, I'll teach more. I lost my job 3 days later. And couldn't get a job anyplace else, was looking to move to New York or looking to move to Boston. And then just something clicked in me and said, no, you got to teach more. You got to stay here to teach it. And I took a little Monday night, study group and book club, and that became my first class. And from that class, it kind of, really blossomed into these series of classes. And those series of classes and the class notes then became my first books. And that became something that's known as the Temple of Witchcraft series of books. And it's 6 books, and it deals with 5 degrees within a tradition that I kind of created from my own experience. And my vision of it was just to teach people, use it, don't use it, whatever you want to do with it, but to give a classroom experience, because I didn't come up in a coven. I came up in classes with Lori Cabot. And a lot of people don't want to join a group because joining a coven is almost like the commitment of a family. So I ended up having people coming to these classes, and some would come and some would go and some would stick around. And after a few years, after maybe a good 10 years, I had a group of people who felt a bond and felt community, and we'd celebrate the seasons together and we'd do social work together. And there was this movement to kind of create something that would outlast any one person. And I was really uncomfortable with being put in a position of being the leader alone. I was the teacher of certain material, but I didn't want to be in charge of it all. I didn't want to have that level of responsibility. And for me, it was about empowering other people. So it's not about one person being in charge, but it's about how can we cooperate to do it. So we started having some meetings to figure out what we wanted, and we spoke to a couple lawyers, and we ended up creating a nonprofit legally. And that was called the Temple of Witchcraft. And we had great debate on the name as well. We almost went with the Temple of Wisdom because we knew how difficult it would be to get land and property and insurance and all that wonderful stuff when you have the word witchcraft in your name. But we also thought it was really important to do that. A lot of the pagan groups that were founded before us, a lot of the witchcraft groups that were founded before us, don't use the word witch in their name because it is, classically hard to do it. So we kind of bit the bullet and said, this is who we are. This is what we're about. We want the right people to find us. And we also want it to not be ostracized, by the greater community. So we incorporated it as the Temple of Witchcraft and rented a small office to do classes and to have a little store in. And then once we could prove that we could pay the rent for 2 years, we got a loan and we ended up buying a property. And that is our property in Salem, New Hampshire. And then we just went in front of the town board and are getting town plans approved to build a community center. So we've got that next on our stage of fundraising. That will be quite a few years from now, but at least we've got the plans for it. And the model of the temple is really about not being coven-based, although covens can be wonderful, and if people want to be in covens, they can. But the community model of it is based on different forms of ministry, and people who are in the classes are encouraged to be parts of the ministry. So ministry could be things like women's studies and the goddess. They could be about prison ministry, because there's quite a few witches and pagans and people identify with earth spirituality in prisons, but where they get a lot of social services for Christians in prison, not too many people take care of the pagans. So I was involved in prison ministry for about 8 years. There's environmental work, there's social justice work, there's healing work that we could do. So there's these different ministry groups in our community that are based on the zodiac signs. And we encourage people to find, it doesn't have to be their sun sign zodiac, but to find an area of ministry where they can give back to the community. Because a big part of witchcraft for us is the archetypal image of the old village wise woman. So people would go to her for help. It's the cunning man that you'd go to when you needed healing, or where you needed to find a lost object, or you needed to have a reading, or you needed advice. So, a lot of those jobs are split up in our community right now, and people don't think of going to witches for them. But for witches, it's really important to be involved in their community and to be able to give back. And the temple gives us a structure that supports people. And if you have a problem or difficulty, you've got the support of your community to kind of help you out with it.
How many people do you have involved with this?
So, in the local area, I'd say our largest events that we've had are probably around 350 people. You don't have to be a member to come to an event, so some of those people might not, be actively involved. We also teach a lot of online classes, and we have an online mystery school. For a number of years, I started traveling and teaching as I became an author. And then as the interest became too much, we ended up opening up an online school. So we have in-person teachers in New Hampshire, and we also have approved in-person teachers throughout different parts of the country and a couple in Canada. We have actually a pretty big community up in Nova Scotia for the temple. And then from those places, if you don't have a local teacher near you, you can take the online classes. And we have got people all across the world. We've got high priest and high priestess in Sweden. We've got students in Greece. We've got some in Brazil. So I'd say people who have membership in the temple were probably in the 800, 900 range, but not all of those people are active. Some people will take a class, have membership, and then we might not see them for a while. They might go on to do other things. They're still part of it, but they're not actively a part of it at the moment. So I'd say at any one time, we maybe have 400 or 500 people being active.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of people. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're busy little witches. And that's all over the world. So some of these people, we don't actually see. We have a high priestess in China right now. So I'm hoping at some point we're actually talking about meeting for a retreat in the United Kingdom, but that's a couple years now out with COVID.
Very true. Very true. Let's go over to Twitter. Maureen has a question for you, and she is asking at #SpacedOutRadio, I have seen rituals that include caster's blood. What is this? P.S. I am not a witch.
That include caster's blood?
Yes.
I am not familiar with that term. Does she mean the person who's running the circle's blood, or does she mean something from the castor bean? I am not familiar with that. But in most modern witchcraft traditions, blood is fairly not used. Or if it's used, it's not used often, and it's not. You'd only use your own a drop of your own blood in something. But in general, blood magic is not particularly popular in the type of magic that I do. Not to say it's not out there, and not to say there's not traditions that do it differently, but in the modern witchcraft traditions that I'm involved in, blood's not a popular thing.
All right, John on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio is asking, do certain dates have any significance in witchcraft or magic in general? Let's say October 10th, so you have 10/10/2020.
Yes and no. So some witches are deeply involved in astrology and numerology. What he's asking has a definite numerological bent, and some witches are divided against that. We live in a modern society that has assigned numbers to particular days, but it's based on the Gregorian calendar, and it's not necessarily anything that is rooted in nature. So most witches, although they may use numerology for your birthday and for your name and things like that, for timing and for special days, most witches tend to focus on the astrology of things. So on a very basic level, each of the days of the week are named after one of the pagan gods, and that's true in most European languages. So Sunday is for the sun god, Monday is for the moon goddess, Tuesday in English is named after Tyr, who's a Mars warrior god. Wednesday in English would be for Wotan, and Wotan's a very Mercury god, the planet Mercury. Thursday is Thor's day, and that relates to Jupiter, the kind of Norse cognate to Thor. And then Friday is Freya's day or Frigga's day, depending on the interpretation, but that gets cognated with the planet Venus. And Saturday is Saturn's day. So just the cycle of repeated 7 are held sacred to the planets. So there's certain types of magic that are better on a Saturday, like if you want to do protection magic. Saturn is a really great influence in protection, so any type of protection from harm would be great on a Saturday. But if you wanted to do a love spell, then you want to do it for Venus, and so doing it on a Friday would be auspicious for you. But beyond the days of the week, we then get into the astrology of, what is the moon sign? What is the phase of the moon? So is it gaining light? It's waxing. If it's diminishing in light, it's waning. When the light is growing and it's waxing, it's a great time. It's like the tide coming in. So if you want to bring something to you, that's when you do it. And when the moon's growing darker, if you want to get rid of something, that's when you do it. And the closer you are to the full moon, the easier it is to make something happen. And the closer you are to the dark of the moon, the easier it is to banish or get rid of something. And then the moon will be in different signs. The sun will be in different signs. We have a religious holiday schedule. The main core of it is based on what we call the wheel of the year, and that's the equinoxes, the solstices, and the 4 points in between them. And so that makes 8 major what we call Sabbath holidays, not Sabbath, but Sabbath. And then our moon rituals are called Esbats. And Esbats, there's 2 a month, one's for the full moon and one's for the dark moon. So we have a whole kind of religious schedule, and then there's other points that we may honor or other historic holidays we may honor. A traditional one that our temple honors, but we kind of have a modern twist to it. Often August 13th was just a sacred day in the ancient world. It was originally associated either with the goddess Hecate or the goddess Diana. It gets absorbed into the Catholic tradition a couple days later on August 15th as the Feast of the Assumption of the Virgin. But the kind of mid-August is very sacred to the goddess, and particularly to the goddess of the heavens and the light and the darkness, so the moon and the stars. So we celebrate something called the Feast of Hecate on August 13th, and that always stays on the calendar date, but that's one of the few holidays we have that stays on a calendar date. Most of them aren't fixed to the calendar, but are dependent on what the sun and the moon are doing.
All right, question from Chris. How does Wicca recruitment function? Do you guys meet and have conferences or like?
We do have conferences, although I think recruitment's an interesting word. We actually have prohibitions against proselytizing. So we don't actually believe our way is better than anybody else's way, nor do we try to convince you that our way is the right thing for you. Most of the older traditions of it actually make it quite difficult for you to join. Today it's been a little bit more open and information's a lot more accessible, and you could pick up various books and practice it on your own if you wanted to, although I think it's always great to have a teacher to kind of guide you through the process. But we do have different events. So like for our temple, we have public events and we've got private events. So the public events anybody can come to and they can check it out, but they are participatory. So if you're hoping to come and just watch in the corner, that's probably not going to fly. But if you'd like to participate, you're welcome to participate, and there's no professment of belief. Just because you're participating doesn't mean you agree and become a witch in any way. But if you go through a period of training, you become what's called an initiate, and there's usually a ceremony to it, and that's somewhat similar to the sacraments in Christianity. It's not quite the same, but we have our own rites of passage, and initiation is one of them. And when you're an initiate into a witchcraft tradition, then you can come to the private groups that are just for initiates only. But we also then have conferences. There's a larger community to what we do. So I've used the word a couple times tonight, the word pagan. Pagan refers to the Latin of paganus to mean of the land. And so a lot of people look at the pagan traditions as the pre-Christian European traditions. And witchcraft is drawn from that, but witchcraft is like a subsect of that. So if someone wanted to focus their religious views on the Greek deities or the Roman deities or the Celtic or the Egyptians, we might consider them pagan. And then what witchcraft is in each of those cultures is a subset of it. So one of the ways I like to explain it to people who have kind of traditional religious views is that, there's the wider range of Christianity. And then within Christianity, there's Catholicism and Protestantism and Eastern Orthodox. So there's paganism. And then within paganism, there's various sects of Wicca and witchcraft, and then subcategories within those. And then there's other traditions of paganism that have nothing to do and don't use the words Wicca or witchcraft. And those are usually where we have the conferences. So we might have a large conference. There's a beautiful conference that went on for many years that now has ended, but it was in California in the Bay Area called Pantheacon. And it was open to all the different strands of paganism. And it was somewhat experiential and somewhat academic, but it was open to the public. And it was a really wonderful time for all the different groups to be able to come together, to share, to celebrate, to exchange information. And a lot of it's based on education. So lots of people would do workshops. So if you saw a workshop, you liked the idea of it or the title of it or the topic kind of interested you, you can just show up to the workshop and learn a little bit more about it and the tradition that workshop came from. And that might give you some navigation on where your studies might want to go. And people on a witchcraft path, they might dip their toes and even immerse themselves in several different things, or they may find, because we really emphasize the study of cross-cultural traditions, because I think witchcraft is really an orientation. So you may find witchcraft-like practices in parts of Asia, in parts of Africa. It doesn't necessarily have to be a European Wicca type of practice, although that's kind of the root of the modern witchcraft world in the English-speaking world. So I look at things in Tibetan Buddhism, and I'm like, well, they're not calling that witchcraft, but that's pretty much what we do in a different way. Or, I might look at things from an indigenous point of view, and it's not witchcraft, but there's things in indigenous cultures that I can say that's very close to, paganism and different forms of witchcraft, because those are the indigenous cultures and practices of Europe.
Okay, before I get to the next question from our listeners here in our chat rooms, I want to ask you in regards to the spells and binding spells and everything. You have to be careful with that, because too much of one thing or too much of intention going into a spell could really backfire, could it not?
Absolutely. I think you have to be super careful in any intention you have. And I think the wisest of witches I know tend to focus on the spells on themselves first. You have a lot more sovereignty and control over how you change yourself than how you change somebody else. But I think, all magic has a level of danger to it. And I think, if you're binding people every week, then the problem is you. We have a spell that basically is we call it the bottle spell. And so if someone's wishing you malicious harm, if you feel that you're in danger, it's not the first spell you go to, but if you feel that you're justified, and it's a binding spell. And traditionally what you do is that once it's done, and this, where modern magic intersects with traditional magic, you put the bottle in your freezer, and you're basically freezing the situation, cooling it down, stopping the harm. But if you find that you are looking through it and you've got, a freezer full of bottles, you have to kind of come to the conclusion, well, maybe the reason I'm having all these problems with people is I'm the jerk in the situation. I'm the problem. Maybe it's not the fault of all these people that I'm blaming. But there's times when, a binding is appropriate. But if you're doing it all the time, I think you have to really examine yourself. But I think that's true with any magic. A lot of it is best directed towards you. And when you direct it out into the world, it's being as clear but also as open. The more you try to control the way something manifests, the more you close yourself off to possibility. And the more you're open to the highest good around your intention, the more you may be open to things manifesting in ways that are so beautiful and you never ever thought of it. Like when people talk about love spells, that's, a classic thing. You come to the witch and you want a love spell. If you're trying to do a love spell to coerce someone specific who doesn't want to be with you, that's a problem. And I think whatever you do opens you up to it. So if you are willing to do coercive magic on somebody else, then you kind of have a chink in your armor where you're susceptible to being coerced by somebody else. So I don't want that, so I don't tend to do those types of spells. But if you did a love spell to say, I'm clear and I'm open and I'm available and I want to have, love with these qualities to it and not be a specific person or not be tied up to a specific type, but you could stipulate someone I'm attracted to. You can meet the most amazing person that you would not necessarily, have thought of. In my own life, I think I was really hung up on a particular type before I met my husband, Steve. And once I let that go and was able to do the spell of just asking for who's the right person for me, that's how he came into my life. So that's an important part in learning magic. And a lot of magic is about making mistakes too. So you learn from your successes, but you also learn from your failures. So, seeing yourself or seeing a peer get obsessive about something, that's a part of witchcraft. But hopefully it's a part you try not to dwell in and get stuck in. But you may have a phase where you did something wrong. You may have a phase where you got a little obsessed about something. You may have a phase where, you got a little too intense. And part of that is learning to move through it and not get stuck in it.
Well, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we do have to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Christopher Penczak is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're going to continue this absolutely awesome track and trip down the road talking witchcraft. ChristopherPenczak.com is his website. Check it on out. We'll be back with more Spaced Out Radio right after this. was like, where's the music? Where's the music? And then I realized I forgot to turn it up. Yeah, I forgot to turn it up.
That would do it.
Yeah, every time. Every time that'll do it. I'm really enjoying this, dude. Really enjoying this. Thank you.
Me too. Me too. And good questions from the audience too. Sometimes I can go sour, so I'm glad to hear everyone's coming up with some good ideas and good thoughts.
Yeah, they're pretty smart. They're pretty smart, attractive, and smart.
Excellent.
Yeah. I have felt like I have a hair in the back of my throat all night long, and I cannot get rid of it.
Oh.
I hate that. Hate that.
I would agree. Yeah. If you have to speak for a living when that happens, it's tough.
Mm-hmm. All right. Question number 2 for you, since apparently you like breakfast for dinner. Got to ask every guest this. You're familiar with the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
I have not seen it in years, but yes, I did see it when it came out.
All right. You know Devil's Tower in Wyoming where they land the alien craft? Yep. All right. Devil's Tower. Are you on Team Stump, like it's a tree stump, or on Team Rock, that it's a rock formation?
I would love to believe it's a tree stump, but I think common sense for me, I've not seen any evidence that shows that it is a tree stump, so I think it is a rock. At least the time that I was out there, it felt like a rock.
It's a petrified tree, man. Petrified tree. Oh.
Petrified tree could be. I would like to see the scans that they've presented as root systems under there. I don't know if I believe that those are authentic scans.
Well, I think the audience.
But I'm open to whatever.
I think the audience just turned on you.
Oh no! I have no attachment either way. I don't have a stake in Devil's Tower.
All right, cool. Hey, the lovely and talented Nicole Sakic is here. Yes, she is. There she is. Apparently, I should actually announce this. Nicole, put the information in. I will be on Grant Cameron's roundtable panel tomorrow at, I believe it's 11 a.m. Pacific. It'll be on Grant Cameron's White House UFOs YouTube channel. I have no idea what I'm bringing to the table besides my ruggedly handsome good looks. A solid 5.3 out of 10 that I am. And, we'll keep it at that. Yeah, panel discussion. What the hell we're talking about, I don't know. I really don't know. But I do have some answers because I'm a big mouth. Anyways.
Those are the best panels, when you don't know what you're talking about, but you talk anyway.
Yes. We want to give a shout-out to Les Hintz. Welcome to our chat room for the first time. Thank you for joining us. We got like 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
All right.
Throw me some of that Eye of Newt, so that way I'm feeling good.
Yeah, it's not so great. I think for, throat stuff, I would say whorehound. Another kind of fascinating plant name, isn't it? I'm like, what does that mean?
You know what I use? I use a combination of Vicks VapoRub, hot tea, and last year when I had bronchitis, I realized that if I shoot hot sauce in a teaspoon that has capsicum mixed in, it burns the throat and it hurts like hell, but it sure works, man. It sure works.
That definitely works. I use apple cider vinegar with cayenne pepper, so yeah, I totally can get that.
Yeah. Yep. I had bronchitis last year for 4.5 months. Could not shake it. And then I went on these natural remedies, looking up natural remedies, because I'm not really the type of guy who buys into a lot of that. Because the first thing when you got a sore throat, you should have hot lemon tea with honey, because it always works. Bullshit. Never works. Never. Right?
You have to have a shot of brandy in it.
So
if you don't have the brandy in it, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Oh, Nicole, I got some good answers for James Fox's The Phenomena. I know you know of that, but I'm in on that one. But so I started reading this website, and it said capsicum. And I'm like, well, I know what that is. And like, dude, I got like some of the hottest hot sauces I could find in my fridge. So I grabbed one of my hot ones, ones that make you swear after it goes in your mouth, way hotter than sriracha. And I just took a teaspoon of it, and I shot it down, and I just let it burn, and I took the pain. I took one in the morning, one at night. One day I took it 3 times, and within 5 days, my bronchitis was gone.
Yeah, and strangely, all the hot, spicy things often have a high vitamin C content on top of it all. So
Yeah.
I believe that.
All right, let's do this next half hour, Vegan Witch. Here we go. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I'm Dave Scott. You can't see me, not only because I'm on the radio, but because I'm wearing camouflage tonight. Yes, camouflage is a fashion statement up where I live in the middle of nowhere, British Columbia. But I'm glad to be with you here tonight. You can recognize my voice by me speaking, that you know it's me. And I want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with one of our favorite witches around here. Yeah, we've only known him for like 90 minutes, but he's already one of my favorites. Christopher Penczak is his name, and what a great speaker you are, Christopher. And his website, ChristopherPenczak.com. Check it all out. Learn about his books, which can be found on his website. I believe on Amazon as well. Christopher, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're one of our favorites now, so you cast a good spell going into this. I know you did.
Excellent.
You put a spell on us. You put a spell on us. Christopher, I want to get to a question from...
A spell with us.
Okay. I want to get to a question from Princess Denali in our chat room, who is asking, what is your thoughts on Christmas, then, if you are pagan?
Well, so Christmas as a holiday in our society, I would practice Christmas and celebrate Christmas with my family that still celebrates Christmas and with my partner's families that celebrate Christmas. But it doesn't have the same religious connotation to me. But the interesting thing when we do all the history and the study of things is understanding, where the roots of a lot of our holidays that we think of as strictly Christian, where do they really come from? So part of that whole program of converting the traditional pagans as Christianity rises through Europe, one of the ways they did that was absorbing the holidays and the festival customs that the people just didn't want to let go of. So you can kind of come in and say, here's this new religion, everybody has to convert to this new religion, this is what it's all about. But if the people are still going to do the things that they've always done, you have to reframe them. So a big part of what I celebrate, you may find super familiar to a lot of your own holidays in kind of a mainstream religious world. So what is called Christmas, we call Yule. And it comes from the Yule tide. It's also the winter solstice. And we celebrate it a few days before, so usually December 21st. And it's about the growing lights. So there was a movement to put the idea of Christ as the light of the world and the birth of Christ as the light of the world got aligned with the birth of the sun as the light in the world. Because the pagans were going to practice the birth of the light, whether you told them that that's not when Jesus was born, or this was outlawed, or you have to let go of these practices. They still did that. A lot of the customs that we have for Christmas that you don't think of as particularly Christian are actually pagan, and witches celebrate them today. So the idea of bringing the evergreen tree into the house as a symbol of the promise of the renewal of life, and even having the star on the top of it connecting to it, those are all kind of pagan symbols that have gotten wrapped into Christianity but weren't a part of the oldest original forms of Christianity. Christianity didn't have the same calendar and holidays that we associate with Christianity with today. So the idea of the Yule log, that's a pagan tradition. The idea of mistletoe, that's a pagan tradition. There's a great story about the goddess Frigga in the Norse traditions, and how the mistletoe was the one item in the world that she didn't get a promise from to protect her son, Balder. And Balder was the god of light, and kind of an allegory for the sun, and the gods are playing a game, and the god of mischief, and some say evil, tricked a blind god into throwing a dart of mistletoe, and because it was the one thing that could harm him, it killed the sun god Balder, and it started the whole journey into darkness. So they re-celebrate this whole idea of, after the whole journey of the mistletoe, that mistletoe can only be used for something in celebration and love and the kissing under the mistletoe. So it becomes this kind of pagan tradition. Even the idea of Santa Claus that comes from St. Nicholas. In the northern traditions of St. Nicholas, we've got this kind of shamanic view. He's in the red and the white. People associate that with the shamanic mushroom of the Amatia muscara, the white dots on the red mushroom, and kind of going into a trance state. He travels around through the sky. He kind of circles this world tree of the evergreen, all very magical things that have nothing to do with Jesus, yet we all celebrate them as a part of Christmas and the birth of Jesus. Even the kind of the three wise men in the Epiphany, those were three pagan astrologers or three pagan kings, that were coming out. They weren't part of the Judeo-Christian makeup, but they recognized something special in Jesus, and they got their own holiday around it and kind of get wrapped up into the whole mythology. So I think that's how pagans can kind of intersect with some of it. But all the tree stuff and, all the present giving and the mistletoe and the Yule log and the eggnog and wassailing and that type of thing, and the caroling, those were all originally pagan traditions that just got kind of co-opted and rebranded to fit the Christian calendar. It's the same thing with Easter, less popular in America, but things like May Day came from Beltane. Harvest festivals in August that, are still celebrated in Europe as harvest games, but they had pagan traditions to them as well. Some of them are a little less, common, like the autumn equinox in the Catholic calendar is Michaelmas. A lot of people don't celebrate what we call Imbolc in February, in the Christian calendar is Candlemas. But a lot of the underlying themes are very, very similar to the pagan traditions. And even if you get into the ideas of looking at the story of Jesus and the shepherds and the whole birth and everything, that's not wintertime in Jerusalem. So it's much more likely that Christ, if there's a historic Christ, which we could have a debate about, but assuming there's a historic Christ, he was probably born in the springtime. So, why is it set back in December? Because that's the pagan holiday of the rebirth of the sun. So if you're trying to brand your figure as the, savior and the light of the world, well, to the pagans, that happened in December. So you had to move it to December. So it's really fascinating. It helps me a lot. A lot of pagans and witches come to this and say, but I don't want to lose my traditions. I still want to celebrate with my family. I'm like, you can do whatever you want. That's the beautiful thing about witchcraft, is that we have really no tenets that say you can't do something or you have to do something. But at the same time, you can see the beauty of where it intersects. And if you're trying to reclaim, like my mom becoming a witch, she loved Christmas and now she loved Yule. So, for her, the essence of it was still there, because for her, I think it was about the light and the love and the family. And she wasn't as attached to the whole Christian aspect of it, even though that's how she was raised, because it was really about the celebration of everyone coming together. So I still celebrate a secular form of Christmas with my in-laws, and religiously I celebrate Yule.
All right, let's move on here over to Twitter, where John, at hashtag Spaced Out Radio is asking, do you ever use tarot cards before casting a spell to determine its outcome?
I do. In fact, I teach and highly encourage all witches to do some sort of divination before doing the spell. And the first question you ask is, should I actually do this spell? And if you get a no, then you probably should listen to that, although not everybody does. So some people's form of divination is tarot cards. Other people, it might be throwing the Norse runes. For other people, it might be some other system of symbols. I love the tarot cards, and I'm a tarot reader myself, and that's one of the ways that I'm able to offer counsel to people. And I think it's a great way to get a bigger picture. And if you get a yes, you might ask, is there something more I need to know about this? Is there something I need to clarify? Is there anything I need to change in the way that I think I'm going to do the spell? And you can fine-tune it. So a spell that might not have been that successful in your first idea of it, once you do a little divination on it, you might get greater clarity and be able to kind of hone in on what you really want. Because sometimes when we do spells, we think we know what we want, but it's not. You should always kind of spell for the outcome, not how you get there. So if you want a new job, list the criteria of your job that you want, but don't list the company or the position title or the salary amount or all those things that kind of fix it into one space. Be open to, the best possible outcome that suits your criteria.
All right, follow-up question from John. Is there ever, or are you ever worried about making a mistake and experiencing really negative consequences from a spell?
Yes and no. Once you get involved in this, you realize, well, that's the same consequence for any action you take. You know, a spell is a type of action, and there can be a difficult consequence of it. I think anybody who's honest, who's been practicing this for a number of years, has made mistakes, and mistakes are learning experiences. But just like in every family, in every friendship, in every job, if you take action in it, you're going to make mistakes, and hopefully you can learn from those mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes have really bad consequences, and sometimes they have minor consequences. Sometimes the consequences you have to take responsibility for and own up to, or do something to mitigate them. So witchcraft in a lot of ways is like life. You know, it can seem magnified because it can be ritually dramatic, you know, and it can have an immediate sort of backlash to things at times, but it's not the movie type of magic where, you know, there's a balance or a trade-off of every good thing you do has to evoke something bad, or if you make a mistake in magic, you know, something awful is going to happen to you. Usually the worst thing that happens when you make a mistake in magic is you don't get what you thought you wanted. And sometimes you get something different than what you wanted, and then it's about adjusting, you know, your response to that.
All right, let's move on here. I love this question by G-Girl, who is asking, how do you know you are meant to be a witch?
That's another great question. I don't think anybody can answer that for you. I think it's a great soul searching. I sort of explain, and this gets some of my peers upset, but I'm going to share it with you. I think of witchcraft as an orientation to the world. So I think being a witch is sort of like being queer. You know, either you are or you aren't, you know, but there's a lot of range for you to identify what word you want to use. You might not like the word queer. You might not like the word gay. You might, you know, identify with the word lesbian. In the whole greater queer community, now we have trans and non-binary and intersex and you know, all these different ways that you may feel fit your identity. So witchcraft is the same way. You might use the word witch, you might use the word Wicca, you might use the word priestess. And through that process is an awakening. We sometimes call it coming out of the broom closet. So just like queer people have to come out of the closet and kind of, you know, share that part of themselves or decide not to share that part of themselves with their friends and family, witchcraft can kind of be the same way. If you're raised in a culture where this isn't an option, you still are, but you might never consciously come to that realization, or you might keep it secret, or you might find people that are like you, or you might never find people that are like you. But I think it's something inherent in your makeup in this lifetime. It's something inherent in the quality of your energy and your consciousness, and you'll be drawn to it. But you also might be repelled by it. You know, like I was drawn to it, but I was also a skeptic. I was really reluctant to claim the word witch. So if somebody tells you you have to be, you know, fully embracing that you are a witch right away, I would say that's wrong. I think everybody has their own journey to it. Some people say they always knew but didn't have a word for it. But generally, people who are drawn to witchcraft, and I say this with great love, are kind of the weirdos of the world. I'm definitely, you know, not typical and not usual, but being kind of the weirdo of the world doesn't necessarily make you a witch. But the idea, if you have that outside perspective, you know, if you're able to kind of feel things really deeply and tune into these things, it might be something, you know, that you're called to, and you might feel comfortable with those words, and you might not. I'd say the vast majority of people I taught in my early days were really drawn to it, but were really hesitant about the word witch. And because that was my journey, I felt like I was able to help them, and some embraced it, and some just decided, you know, I need these techniques right now to heal. I need these techniques to learn how to meditate. I need these techniques to get to know myself better. And now I've accomplished what I set out to do. And they sort of leave witchcraft to go on to something else. And I'm okay with that because I think witchcraft is offering healing and self-knowledge. So if you got healing and self-knowledge and that was helpful for you, then hooray. I don't think people have to always, you know, make a vow that they're loyal to witches, they're always going to be a witch, or always going to identify that way. I think our journey of self is really complex. And I think, you know, over time we may shed words that no longer fit us, or we may adopt new words that fit us better. And one of the things that I felt over time that has really fit me is the word witch, but I try not to force it on anybody, and I really try to encourage people to explore it. But just kind of like being queer, I wouldn't encourage you to try to identify that way if you're not. even if you think it's cool, or even if you think, it's your friends are doing it or whatever. I think it's a hard life, and it does always kind of put you on the outside to the mainstream. So I wouldn't, although I love my life and I enjoy it deeply, I wouldn't encourage someone to take it unless, that was something they felt called to, because it is a hard road.
Makes a lot of sense. As we continue on with our guest tonight, Christopher Penczak on Spaced Out Radio. Ibarata, who is listening in Singapore, is asking, what's the difference between a wizard and a witch?
Well, most people in the modern culture of witchcraft and magic don't use the word wizard, but there's some few exceptions to that. Generally, people who identify as wizards, it's really deeply about the knowledge path and the learning and the education, and not always inherent in the soul or the consciousness of things. Probably our most famous wizard in our community is a gentleman named Oberon Zell, and he was the founder of the Church of All Worlds and a really great, knowledgeable elder in the pagan tradition. And his wife, Morning Glory Zell, identified as the witch, and he identified as the wizard. But most people in the practices that I have in modern witchcraft don't use the word wizard for a male witch. But most people identify as the word wizard, usually also identify as male.
All right, let's go to another question here. Chemical Summer is asking, is voodoo another tag word for what you do?
I would not use the word voodoo for what I do. Voodoo is considered to be a traditional African religion, and it has a very specific history and has very specific lines, just like there's very specific lines within British traditional Wicca. So depending on which line you're talking about with voodoo, you can't just say I'm a voodoo practitioner. You usually have to train and be initiated to kind of claim that and to claim to be a part of that priesthood. I think there's common points between witchcraft and voodoo. And I think if you're going to talk about it as ritual technology or consciousness technology, I think we do a lot of the same techniques in different ways. But voodoo has its own pantheon of spirits, has its own culture, has its own methods of transmission, has its own practices. I think there can be a lot of support between witches and voodoo. I actually do a lot of work down in New Orleans, and I help run tours in New Orleans for our witches to kind of go down, and we get to experience different voodoo rituals and different voodoo practitioners. But it is something a bit different, and even New Orleans voodoo is different from Haitian voodoo, just like there can be different traditions of witchcraft. So I would be hesitant to not say that anything I do is voodoo. And there's some practitioners of voodoo who are also practitioners of witchcraft, and they're able to blend the two, but they've been trained specifically in both of them. So with all the African traditional religions, it's really good to be respectful, to not to claim to be something that you're not, even if they have similar techniques. So I wouldn't use the word voodoo, and most people in the traditions I practice wouldn't use the word voodoo either. But I think it's probably, there's one religious practice that's more malign than witchcraft, it's probably voodoo, and it's really a beautiful religion of serving the spirits and serving the community and getting in touch with your inner angel, which, is never the part that shows up in the movies.
I got to ask you, what about the reputation on the mainstream media? If you take cartoons, for instance, the witch is always evil. The wizard is always fumbling and bumbling in his laboratory trying to put things together. I realize that's just stereotype, all right? But in the end, that is a lot of what the picture gets. What do we not know about Wicca, witchcraft, that the mainstream public should know?
Well, if you peel it back, even the oldest stories that we have, even though, going back to the Greeks, they started to cast the witch as the villain, but something interesting changed, by the time we got to the Christian era. Even in the Greek period, the witch was always beautiful. She was an enchantress. The wizard was the wise man, was the philosopher, was the doctor. And as time has gone on, because magic becomes devalued or feared, the devalued part gets put to more of the male image of the wizard, and the devalued shows as the bumbling kind of fool image of it, where the fear part for the witch becomes, this malignancy, this, the crone that is out to curse you, that's going to poison you and all of that. And that a lot of witches would like to blame Christianity for that, but it actually started in the late Greek period and throughout the Roman period. And once the Holy Roman Empire rose up, they just kind of magnified it, but it was there before that. So there's always a fear of something that's different, but the image, of witches being regular people, and the classical image of the witch being beautiful and being wise. Even if they were painted as the hero or the villain of the story, they were still, there's enchantment to them. And I think most people in our modern era don't think of that as part of the witch. There was a wonderful magician who didn't identify as a witch because it was before the Witchcraft Acts in England were repealed. But her name was Dion Fortune, and she was a ceremonial magician and a priestess. But she wrote these beautiful novels that, depicted a priestess of the moon, which if you looked at her, you would think today witchcraft. But they pictured her much like the ancient Greek heroes and villains. But she was definitely this enchantress. She was definitely the beautiful woman. She was definitely the empowered modern woman, even though she was writing at the turn of the century in the early 1900s. So to realize that witchcraft is multifaceted and that those stereotypes are stereotypes, just like any stereotype we have of a different religion or a different ethnicity or a different culture. And while there may be historic reasons why people have carried those stereotypes, they don't portray the reality of it. So most witches I know are average people who live traditional lives. You wouldn't know that they're witches unless they told you. We wear normal clothes, although many of us tend to favor black. We don't always wear black. Some of us who are priests and priestesses and ministers in our community have taken vows to wear black or when we work or wearing traditional clothes in ways that you may identify us as being witches, but it's not necessarily, something anyone has to do. And, witches are as varied as people, in any culture and any time, any place.
All right, we've got about 2.5 minutes here before we have to go to break at the top of the hour. Christopher Penczak is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I got to ask, before we head to break, in regards to spells, have you ever put a bad spell on anyone? Not a curse, just thrown out a bad spell there, like you hope your former boss who fired you out of, one of your jobs, maybe you hope he stubs his toe on the desk. I don't know.
No, nothing petty. So technically a bad spell would be a curse. The 3 words we use for it are curse, hex, and jinx. So the pettier stuff might be a jinx. The hexes are any type of malicious intent where you want something to not go well for somebody. And a curse usually denotes that it has a verbal component, which is where we kind of get the idea of swearing as being cursing. But generally, I've taken vows as a priest that I'm here to uphold the sacred and the holy. So I'm not going to use what I've learned for pettiness. I'm not going to use it for harm that is baseless. Because usually when you get in the mood that you want to do that, that's all ego, And so a lot of our work is about healing and transcending the ego. So you don't want to encourage that with magic, because I think that just makes things worse for you. I have done work where I would classify it as justice work. If someone has committed a crime and you do a spell to have them get caught, whether you know the name of the person or you're just asking the person who committed crime X to get caught, would you say that is a curse? Some people in our community would. We have that whole Wiccan read and law of 3. So people will look at that and say, well, you're causing harm to the person who did that. If they're meant to get caught, they'll get caught. And if they're not, they're not. You shouldn't do it. But I believe that, a witch cannot suffer an injustice. So if I can put my power and my energy towards justice happening, but it has to be justice. It can't be malice. So I'm all for criminals getting caught. I'm all for laws being upheld. I think if someone breaks a law of society, there's a great story, and it's not mine, but I use it as a teaching story, of a high priestess whose daughter was in an abusive relationship. And through the abusive relationship, the ex was under a restraining order. And the witch turned to the ex and said, "You will not violate this restraining order. You'll have my curse upon you." And he violated the restraining order. And when he did, as he was trying to violate the restraining order, crossing the street to go accost his ex, a car hits him. Was that a curse? Was that protection? Was that justice? The boundary was set. The legal courts, they did everything legally they could to it. But sometimes people have restraining orders and they still get hurt and killed. So, what was the mechanism going on there? Would that be harm? Would that be justice?
That is a huge debate.
So I don't know if I would cast that spell, but I use that as a teaching story for people to, think before they do it. What would you do in this situation? How do you feel about that? 5 years later, how do you feel about it now?
My friend, I'm going to get a hold on right there, because we are going to go to break at the top of the hour. We got Christopher Penczak for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned. Hour 3 is next. Flying by, man. Flying by.
Yeah, it is.
30 more minutes. I'm just going to run my dogs outside. I'll be right back, okay?
Get bumblefuck.
Okay.
4 million Scoville units of pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauces come in 3 flavors. The burning bumble. Tone it down a bit with Bumblicious and throw the sauce on everything.
Spicing up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajans.com.
The party is always on at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is where you want to be when visiting Canada's West Coast. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the best rated food in the city. The menu starts at $6.95. Why party anywhere else in Vancouver when the Moose is right there? Get your horns up and rock with the Moose, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is the paranormal lawyer Michael W. Hall. I'd like to invite you to listen in each Sunday night where we're going to open up your eyes to everything strange and paranormal. I will be hosting some great guests with topics that affect us all, such as UFOs, ghosts, and everything paranormal. Let's learn together on Spaced Out Radio Sunday with myself, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer at spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckroot, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, and while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
Hello everyone, this is Ryan Stacy from the Experiencer Support Association, otherwise known as TESSA. We're glad to team up with Spaced Out Radio to help investigate your experiences on the SOR Sightlines Report. Together, we'll investigate the strange sightings and occurrences you've had. We're looking for answers just like you. So fill out a Sightlines report on the Spaced Out Radio website and let's figure out what's going on together.
Hello, space travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month. And follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
The SOR Vault is open for business, and do we have some cool swag for you to pick up? All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from, and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it to you. So do your shopping by supporting the store you love. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault.
All right, buddy, I'm back.
Alrighty.
All right. So we got 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
Good stuff, man. Good damn stuff. This is a good show.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun.
Good.
And again, still good questions. It's been good.
Yeah, we're keeping you awake. That's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Exactly.
You know, that's how we roll around here. We try and keep our guests awake. One quick thing. When I say goodnight to you on the radio side, just wait until we go. I throw it a break, and then I'll say goodnight to you properly off the air.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, man. Thank you again for doing this.
So what are your typical guests like? Who do you have on usually?
Usually we have a mixed bag, man. We're like a Heinz 57 show of the strange and weird.
Okay. Like a lot of paranormal type stuff?
Yeah. Paranormal, supernatural, Bigfoot, cryptid, monsters, UFOs, aliens. Let's see. Princess Denali, does Dave pee outside with the dogs? He is a guy. Of course I do. Of course I do. My neighbors can't see into my backyard. Of course I do. Yes, I use hand sanitizer. Oh, my gosh. Kind of a personal question there. Kind of an obvious personal question. This is what I have to deal with. Right? Oh, man. All right, we got 30 seconds. Thank you so much to Too Far Gone from Earth, Science Bob, and Kim for the super chats tonight. Really do appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you so much. And a good way to support the show is go get some swag from the SOR Vault. We are going to have new swag up very, very soon, so stay tuned for that. Probably in the next 7 to 10 days, we'll have something up for you and go from there. All right, here we go with Hour 3, everyone.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. I'm Dave Scott, the guy wearing camouflage so you can't see me. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live and Revolution Radio. All of our archives are free. All you got to do is go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Let's check it on out, shall we? Obedible. Obedible is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including Rockin' Out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we introduce our guest, Christopher Penczak. He is a witch out of the beautiful state of New Hampshire, and yes, he does use a lot of Eye of Newt. He is an author, he is a teacher, he is a writer, he is everything that he wants to be in life, and you got to respect that. You really do. ChristopherPenczak.com is his website. You can find all of his books on his website, as well as on Amazon. Christopher, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sad that it's almost over, but thank you.
Right before the break, we kind of got into curses a little bit, and this kind of intrigues me because I'm someone who has been cursed. It took a while for it to get rid of it, okay? And the funny part about it is, one of the things that when I was cursed by this evil, evil succubus of a woman, all right, was the fact that she didn't like that I could summon UFOs. She was jealous. And ever since that curse was placed on me, and even after it's been removed, I haven't been able to do that. It's like I lost how.
Okay.
So I'm curious, as someone who has been cursed, number one, for people who may not know, how do they know that they are?
Well, the guarantee to get to know is to find an expert who can kind of do the diagnosis. A lot of people feel that they're cursed, but are often not cursed. You know, a lot of it, our esoteric bodies are very much like our physical bodies. So we have sort of a spiritual immune system that goes along with our physical immune system. And sometimes, you know, you might not be sick, but you might be suppressed. We talked a little bit about astrology before. Sometimes you have bad astrological aspects just to your general nature. There's certain cycles that happen, like there's a 30-year cycle, so every 30 years things get tough for us. So when you're experiencing one or more of those things, you might think you're cursed, but it just passes, as those things come out of alignment and go into a neutral place. Curses, the most common curse that can be out there is people are self-cursed. Often they place something upon themselves through their own harmful thinking and through their own, self-limiting paradigms, and they think that someone else or something else has put it upon them. There's a lot of unconscious cursing that's going on in the world when you accept programming from other people, from institutions, from family, from parents that is contrary to your nature. But if you accept it on some level, you've kind of accepted a curse. But that's what most people are not talking about when they're talking about curses. They're usually talking about a full-on ritual or some type of psychic attack in some way. And the only way really to be sure is to get a reputable practitioner who can help divine that for you or can kind of go through the symptoms of it. Generally, have you pissed off somebody who, is a practitioner who has the knowledge of this, and that can be the first place to start, because a lot of people who don't traffic with the magical think that they're cursed, and usually it's just, bad luck or what we call today the evil eye in most cultures. That's not a full-on ritual curse, but it's someone's jealousy or it's someone's envy towards you, and that can act like a curse as well. But it's getting kind of a diagnosis, kind of like going to a doctor and seeking an expert and kind of going through both logical and intuitive means of, what are you experiencing? What are your symptoms? What kind of curse that could be? People are often surprised to find out that I teach my students cursing, because they're like, oh, I thought you were, good and loving and helpful. But a lot of our job is to help people. And so if you can't recognize a curse, how are you going to be able to take it off? So you have to kind of know the different methods and the different styles of what curses can do and how people put them on so you can take them off. And then that's the resolution, is if you can get a practitioner who's versed in curses to be able to take it off. Or some of us just kind of over time slough it off, like our immune system recovers from a virus or a bacteria. But to speak to your experience of to have a psychic or magical talent or energetic talent, and then to be cursed, and even if the curse is removed, to not have that talent work in the same way again, sort of like scar tissue, or it's sort of like, someone who recovers from a really debilitating illness and then never quite the same after that. It doesn't mean they still can't have a great life, but someone who has the 6 months of pneumonia and can't breathe, and if they were an Olympic jogger before that, they might not be ever going back to be an Olympic jogger again. So it's that damage. Magic can do damage, and so that's why, when you asked, would you do a curse to, have your boss stub their toe or something like that, I don't even like to traffic in that, because my job as a priest of witchcraft is to really uphold the sacred. But I think those things have effect, and a lot of people can pick up a book or have a natural raw talent, or might bring in a past life memory about things, and they don't necessarily have the training or the community that moors them in ethics. And an understanding of morality, and so they can, do a lot of damage, and I think a lot of people do. I don't think it's as common as a lot of people think. I'd say for every 10 sessions I have where someone starts out with, I think I'm cursed, maybe 1 or 2 are actually curses, but the vast majority are bad luck, bad timing, just evil eye, envy type of stuff, but not full-on curses.
Yeah, see, I was told by her ex-fiance, as well as a former friend of hers as well, that the curse did happen. She was very open about that. Very open about that. So when you go through that, and I'm sure there's other people just like me, the recovery time, do you ever fully recover from it if you have been cursed?
It depends on the curse. It depends on the level of, for lack of a better word, voltage the person puts behind it. What yours sounds like is very malignant and had a lot of emotion behind it. So I don't know if you'll ever fully recover to get back that talent, to get back that ability. It's a hard thing. These things have effect, and there's permanent consequences to stuff. Generally, when you have that type of curse, there's some type of severing to a level of vitality that you've had that would be able to fuel those abilities. So sometimes doing work in terms of energy exercises to get reconnected to that vitality can cause improvement, but sometimes it doesn't, So if you were a client of mine, probably the thing I would take you through would be some type of circulating of energy work, just to see if it gets stuck anywhere, and that might tell me where the problem would be. But even if it doesn't get stuck, it just might be, the curse sapped a level of voltage. And, if you need 9 points to be able to summon, a spirit or summon a UFO or summon whatever the experience is, or to do whatever your talent is, and your natural voltage now after the curse is like at a 7. You know, you don't have that much to spare to get to it. And there's ways you can build it, but they don't always work.
All right, let's move on to some questions from the audience here. And I know Nikki has a few here. When she gets warmed up, they just fire away. All right.
Excellent.
Nikki's one of my favorite psychics out there. And she is asking, have you ever come across practicing necromancers?
It depends on how you define necromancy. So that's another kind of word that's been hijacked by the movies. So technically, necromancy simply means divination with the dead. So if you ever go to a medium who helps you connect to your ancestors, that's technically, from a historic point of view, necromancy. Most people, though, when they say necromancy, they mean doing magic with dead bodies or zombies or reanimating bodies and things like that. I've never known anybody to reanimate, anything that's like that. I do know people who've done necromantic magic, but what I mean by that is they've used bones to connect to the spirit of those bones, to then use that spirit to fuel their magic or to be the servitor of their magic, and that can actually be very effective. I'm not against necromancy if all parties are willing. So I think the thing is, if you're working with the dead, if you're working with the spirit of something, you're asking it, do you want to participate in this? This is what I can offer for you. And it's not necessarily like the movie image of the deal with the devil, like you got to give him a body or you got to give him blood or you got to give him something like that. There are traditions that are like that, but that's not the type of necromancy that happens in witchcraft. A big part of modern witchcraft is ancestor veneration. So by the traditional views of necromancy, what we do would have an aspect of necromancy, but also like if you've been to various, Thai and Vietnamese restaurants where above the door or by the kitchen, they've got like an ancestral altar for the prosperity of the business by technical definition, because you're calling upon the ancestors to have a successful business. That's necromancy too. But it's gotten more sensationalized with movies and this idea of grave robbing and things like that. But, there's times when we go to graveyards and we ask the spirits of the dead, can you help us out? Can you protect us? Can you lend me your power? And some would consider that necromancy, even though there's no bones or no flesh involved. It's just the dirt of the graveyard.
All right, Nikki is also asking about astral travel. Do you use it? Have you tinkered with it at all?
We do. Actually, that's a big part of our training. A big part of witchcraft is so much of what we do is subjective. So we do quite a bit of things that can have an objective reality. So we do a lot of psychic training, which also includes astral travel. We focus in the beginning on what people would call remote viewing, because in remote viewing you can then get objective answers. You pick coordinates for a place. A teacher will give you coordinates to a place or a description or a map of something that you can't see, and then you project to that place and draw your own map or come back with your own description. And if they match in some way, you had a successful trip. You had a hit. As you start to rise on the planes, they become more and more subjective, compared to, a remote viewing session. So if I'm trying to go into the upper astral, if I'm trying to go into other planes and the models of the Qabalah or the seven heavens, and there's different ways of describing the different dimensions. But the further you get away from Earth, the less objective it becomes and the more subjective it becomes. But if you've had objective success in the physical world doing remote viewing, you can start to trust that feeling when you're going to have that same type of feeling in the higher worlds. If you start out with the higher worlds and you never get any objective training, then you can very easily get into delusion. So you think you have your hopes and dreams and fears, and that's when people see a lot of the kind of fluffy things of like, every time I do astral travel, I see the unicorns, and the unicorns tell me how much I'm lovely, and maybe you're having that experience, but maybe you're not. If I've trained somebody and they can do remote viewing, then I trust more whatever their vision is on the higher planes. So yeah, we do quite a bit about that. We do quite a bit with psychic diagnosis and receiving information that can be verified, because then as you get into the more mystical, you can't really verify it, but you got to make sure you kind of have those psychic muscles to be able to connect to something that's authentic.
All right, we'll give Nikki the hat trick here. And she is asking, do you work with hierarchy beings on the other side in your practice or work?
Well, I think there's definitely a magical celestial hierarchy. And I think if you work with any beings, everything, including us, are a part of that hierarchy. But there's different, in the psychic and the New Age worlds, there's different terms for similar ideas. A big thing about, occultism of witchcraft, of modern witchcraft, is we look to, see what is the same phenomenon, what is the same function, but different cultures call it different things. So, those in the more New Age world might talk about the ascended masters and their celestial hierarchy. We call them the mighty dead or the hidden company. And those are the enlightened magical masters as opposed to just the ancestors that we honor. We work with a variety of planetary and angelic spirits, which, the closer they are to the earth, the lower they are in the hierarchy. Not that that's bad, but it just means they're less cosmic. And the further you get from the earth and the further the planets and the star spirits go out, the more they're upper parts of the celestial hierarchy. So yeah, definitely a lot of our work is about looking at maps, but they're the cosmic maps. And if you want to do something in particular, how do I contact that entity or that frequency or that dimension that will lend the power for what I want to do or will give me the information for what I want to know? So even, the days of the week stuff that I talked to you about before, earlier in the show, if there's a particular level of consciousness where I want information, I have to connect to that level of the celestial ladder. And if I do it on the corresponding day, that helps me make contact.
All right, let's move on here. Princess Denali asks this. She goes, I recently read if one says something negative, it could be reversed by, say, 3 positive statements. What's your opinion on this?
I haven't heard that specifically. Our teaching on it is that you have to be responsible for everything you think, say, and do. But that's really hard. We have all sorts of things that just kind of slip out all the time. So we have a technique called neutralization. So if I think something that I don't want to manifest, I have to follow it immediately with I neutralize that. If I say something I don't want to manifest, then I have to speak out loud, I neutralize that. If I visualize something I don't want to manifest, I have to imagine canceling it out or having a vision of drawing an X through it or erasing it or stamping it canceled. But using the method in which I generated it, using that same method to neutralize it. So it's not so much that you have to do 3 positive things to something negative. In fact, we stem away from the words positive and negative. For us, positive and negative are electrical charges or at different ends of the pole or in different parts of the spectrum. But we don't necessarily see positive as good and negative as evil when you look at it in terms of charges. Like if you go to the beach or you go to a waterfall, that's negative ions, and that makes you feel really good. If you stand in front of a microwave, if you stand in front of electronic equipment, that's a lot of positive ions, and that drains you after a while. So we get very precise in our language. If we want to banish harm, we say we banish harm. We don't say we banish the negative, because you need a balance of forces within you. Just even, think of your atoms in your body. There's negative and positive charges. You think of the balance of electrolytes and the current of electricity going through your nervous system. There's positive and negative charges there. So we never say we banish the negative or we draw to us the positive. We're always about balance. One of the first spells I learned, and it struck me funny at the beginning because we have these kind of cultural biases. It said, I banish all positive and negative forces that may come to do me harm. And I attract to me all positive and negative forces that will bring harmony and correct balance to me. And I was like, why are you calling, negative things? But it's this understanding of the precision of language and how currents of energy move. There's all sorts of polarities within every energy, not just electrical. So you need the positive and the negative currents to kind of create the movement to it. So you don't banish one of them, but you try to bring the things that are harmonious to you.
All right. We got about 5 minutes left with our guest tonight, Christopher Penczak. We're talking witchcraft all night long. Where does psychic intuition come into play here?
Psychic intuition is the voice of your soul. Psyche goes back to the ancient Greek. It's both a goddess and it's a part of the soul. And it's the part of the soul that's able to get us to tap into our intuition, to be able to perceive things from a higher dimension, not just through the physical senses. So a big part of witchcraft and a big part of the training that I do in our mystery school, the first year, is all meditation, psychic development, journaling, remote viewing, healing work, because you got to be able to receive information from the other world before you start trying to change it. It's like learning a language. You're really trying to learn how to listen to what's being said to you before you try to change your reality by speaking. So psychic stuff is super important to us. I think most witches have some type of psychic training. are usually asked to learn some type of divination like tarot, or learning to, do crystal ball or tea leaves or things like that. Just because you've got to be able to ask the questions before you start setting things in motion.
Interesting. So how do you deal with spirit activity?
Well, we actually are pretty inviting of it. I'm all for all spirits that are well behaved. So in that celestial hierarchy, there's everything from restless dead that are looking for solace to, the gods and goddesses of the cosmos, to the spirits of the lands, to the fairy beings, to the angelic beings, and those who want to work with us and will work with harmony and for the highest good, we invite in. Some things are restless, like I get called sometimes for hauntings and things like that. And it's almost like, counseling. You want to try to bring as much harmony as you can. You want to understand where things have gone wrong. You want to try to right, whatever's gone wrong. If somebody wants to leave and they feel stuck, you try to move them along, but you don't also try to move somebody who's not ready to go. You try to counsel them to get them to be ready to go. But in general, most witches' houses are pretty spirit active of both human and non-human spirits because, it's a temple, it's a place of solace, it's a place of healing. So as long as everyone's going to be well-behaved, we're pretty welcoming. But if you're not well-behaved, then we'll move you along.
Many are starting to think that there are different timelines, and what we're actually seeing in the spirit realm aren't really spirits, but they are people from different timelines that are somehow one way or another communicating with us. What's your opinion of that?
I believe there are other timelines because a lot of witchcraft is about the weaving of fate. So each line in the tapestry of fate is like what we call in kind of modern metaphysics and paranormal timelines. So I'm totally down with that idea. But I do think in the individual timelines, there are different spirits, some that have been human, some that have never been human, some that want to be human. And I think that's a phenomenon that's pretty clear through history and folklore and through experience. I'm not saying some manifestations can't be the bleeding over of timelines, but I don't think that's the only reason for spirits.
Well, I guess that makes sense, my friend. 2 minutes here to go before we have to say goodnight to you, and I want to say a big thank you to you, Christopher Penczak, for coming on Spaced Out Radio, hanging out with us, teaching us a little bit about witchcraft, and showing us that it really isn't that scary, even though we may want it to be, and that we shouldn't, steal your broom, or we shouldn't call you vegan witches or anything like that because you're going to throw a shoe at us or something, or I have newt or whatever it may be. But no, seriously, I have had an absolute blast with you tonight, and thank you for a very fun show. Let our audience know where they could get a hold of you, where they could find your books, and find out more information if you don't mind, please.
Absolutely. The best place is ChristopherPenczak.com, and my name is weird. It's Penczak. Also, templeofwitchcraft.org is where I do a lot of my community work, and I'm on all the social medias not all the social medias, but I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram. If you just type my name in, you'll probably find me through there. And those are the best ways to contact me through my website. And our mystery school is opening up its online classes. So if you go to templeofwitchcraft.org and click on education, you can find about Witchcraft 1, which is a year-long class that we teach online and also in person. But with COVID, we're doing everything online at this moment. So if you're interested in going deeper, that really gives you a good window into the type of stuff that I do.
Do you get a pointy hat if you sign up for your club?
You actually get something special at the end of each degree, but none of them are pointy hats.
Well, that may cause a few to think the other way now. No, I'm serious, but on an honest note, man, you were absolutely fantastic tonight. Let's stay in touch because we would definitely want to bring you back on the show. This has just been phenomenal. And next time we bring you on, though, I want to learn some of your stories, of the things that you do, why you do it. There's just so much. Sure. We could have done another few hours here with you, and you made it a lot of fun. Thank you so much on behalf of our listeners.
Thank you for having me out. This was a beautiful night. I really appreciate it. Had a lot of fun.
Not a problem. Coming up next on the mighty SOR, as we say goodnight to Christopher Penczak, ChristopherPenczak.com. We're going to get into the SOR Newswire. We're going to get into the thought of the Dave. Yeah, we're going in strong to this final half hour. Stick around because it's going to be a lot of fun. That's what we like around here. is some fun. So stick with us. We'll be back. Spaced Out Radio. We'll be back. I'm Dave Scott. Spaced Out Radio. We'll be back. Spaced Out Radio. That's high quality interviewing right there, my friend. I'll give you a few claps.
Why, thank you.
Not a problem.
Likewise, often I do the podcast where things are not professional broadcast stuff. So I deeply appreciate how organized you are. This is great.
Well, we could thank Corrence, the booking guy, and the power of his mustache for bringing this together. So, and we like a good mustache and beard around here.
Thank you so much.
We really do.
Mm-hmm. I'm rocking my quarantine beard right now, so I appreciate
Rock
that.
and roll, man. Just so you know that you're more than welcome, as we say to almost every guest here, you're more than welcome that if you want to share this show on your website or something, just grab the archive off of our YouTube channel and, do what you want with it.
Okay, absolutely. I definitely will share that. Thank you.
Appreciate that, man. Appreciate that. Good night to you, and thank you for staying up late.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the show, and hopefully I'll talk to you again soon.
You definitely
Take care.
will.
Be well.
Good night.
Bye.
Fantastic energy on that dude. Honestly, Christopher Penczak. Fantastic. Hey, Randy Spurl. Hi, Burrito. How you doing? Hey, Ross. Thanks for coming on in. I got the news ready. News ready. Been a good show. Even Derek liked them on Twitter. Hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Thanks for the clown, Marty. Appreciate that. As far as I know, why I was cursed, because the person who cursed me was pissed off that I was having all of these experiences, and at the time I was completely too dumb to understand what they meant, and it pissed her off. Yeah. So that's what happened, Marty. I'm surprised none of you recognize the whole Anchorman thing there. Dave Scott, Space Now Radio. I'm Dave Scott. This is Space Now Radio. Dave Scott. Remember Anchorman when Ron Burgundy is fighting with Tits McGee there? Veronica Corningstone, not Tits McGee. She has the night off. I knew you would get it, Nikki. I totally knew you would get it. Dirty filth. Wash your mouth out with soap. Will Ferrell is funny. Now, if you want to talk non-funny, we're going down the road of Bob Saget, Ray Romano, Dave Coulier, Roseanne Barr, Whoopi Goldberg, not funny. What's the lady who does the afternoon talk show? Ellen DeGeneres, not funny. Not funny at all. John Kenny was incredible. Taken way too soon. Good Canadian kid from Toronto. Let me tell you, John Kenny, to make you laugh, brother. I'm Dave Scott, Space Out Radio. That was right, Phil. Here we go. We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. We really do appreciate it. Want to remind you that if you've missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Speaking of the news, let's do this thing, shall we? Yes, let's. The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show, where we get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and sometimes the haunted. One of Kamloops, British Columbia's spookiest locations is getting some real national attention. Reader's Digest recently rounded up the 10 most haunted places in Canada, and Tranquil Sanatorium in Kamloops has made the list. Tranquil began as a tuberculosis hospital in 1907. By 1910, housed 49 patients with 4 nurses and 12 attendants. With the introduction of anti-tuberculosis drugs in the 1940s, the sanatorium became obsolete, closing in 1958. It was then converted to a psychiatric hospital by the provincial government and housed individuals with varying degrees of mental illness. The sanatorium closed its doors for good in 1983. Over the years, there's been interest from several buyers, but nothing materialized, and the building stood empty and perhaps a little haunted. According to Reader's Digest, echoes of its former residents seem to remain. However, as witnesses report off the chart's paranormal activity, ranging from orbs to eerie disembodied moans, many local residents have snuck onto the property over the years in an effort to have a paranormal experience. Now known as Tranquil Farm Fresh, it offers terrifying escape rooms along with haunted heritage tours. Unfortunately, those looking for a scare at one of the most haunted places in Canada will have to wait to explore the sanatorium when it reopens, as Tranquil Farm Fresh is currently closed due to COVID. Yeah, of course. So that just ruins another one. That's about 2 hours south of me. I'm going to have to go to that. Definitely. Tourists to Niagara Falls can now ride all-electric ferries past the iconic waterfalls. The 2 ferries made their debut in New York on October 6th, fueled by locally generated hydropower. That's American power, not the Canadian kind that they have just on the other side of the falls. Their batteries can recharge in just 7 minutes as passengers climb on and off the vessels. New boats operated by Maid of the Mist are among the first vessels of their kind to navigate U.S. waterways. The first all-electric passenger and car ferry in the U.S. pushed off from the banks of the Alabama River in 2019. These new non-polluting voyages are part of a global trend towards electrifying passenger vessels. The electrification of these 2 brand-new tour boats sets the example that we can clearly electrify our economy, which is good for the communities, our health, and our climate. Gil Quinones, president and CEO of the New York Power Authority, said, "The New York Power Authority and the New York State Parks worked with Maid of the Mist to get the boats afloat, while automation company ABB fitted the vessels with battery packs. Maritime industries, which have a similar carbon footprint as aviation, are trying to rein in planet heating emissions from traditionally diesel-powered fleets. Ferries, though, make up just a small slice of carbon dioxide polluting from transportation. They pumped out roughly 11.6 million tons of greenhouse gases in 2018, about as much as a 3 coal-fired power plant that might produce in a year, and not even a third of the annual carbon footprint of a large airline like Delta. But the diesel-powered boats can be bad for local air quality because they also let out soot, nitrogen oxides that boost smog. Since ferries travel along the same routes over and over again each day, the pollution builds up in nearby communities. This is now changing it all. That'd be kind of cool to do that. Ooh, scary scene here. You know, this always freaks me out. Them big cranes, they totally freak me out. Why? Because you always see them tipping over. Anyways, this happened in Florida, where firefighters said luckily no one was inside a Fort Lauderdale home when a crane moving a shed into a neighbor's yard collapsed and fell through the roof. Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue said the crane was moving a shed into the neighbor's backyard when it toppled over for unknown reasons just the other day. Battalion Chief Stephen Gallan said the family that lives there in the home was away on vacation at the time of the incident, and firefighters rescued dogs and cats from inside the house. In most of the living area, the kitchen, living room, and dining room, the roof was just completely collapsed into the living space. You know, we're so very fortunate that no one was inside this residence when this all took place, added Gallan. The crane operator was treated for a minor scrape to his arm. Authorities said the cause of the crane's collapse is under investigation. How scary is that? You're on vacation, and you come home and your house is ruined. Here is a very, very cool story. A Pennsylvania man was presented with a high school diploma at his residential facility just weeks before his 100th birthday. Albert Montella was presented with a diploma by the Rose Tree Media School District Superintendent Eleanor DiMarino Linen at Sunrise of Granite Run Senior Living in Media. It's exciting because I never expected it. I really never did. This is a far dream of this ever happening to me, Montella said. Montella said he left high school prematurely in 1938 to help support his family, and he ended up enlisting in the Navy to serve in World War II. He served our country, he supported and helped his community, and all of that without asking for much in return. So at the age of 100, we get to finally honor him in some small way, DiMarino Linen said. The ceremony was attended by family, friends, and well-wishers, including a crew from the Brookhaven Fire Company, where Montella's grandson, Rob, serves as the chief. Another grandson, Dave, is an engineer with the department, and a great-grandson, R.W., is lieutenant. My grandfather made many sacrifices, leaving school to help raise our family, and here he is, almost 100, so we are very thrilled, granddaughter Michelle Archie stated. How can you not be happy for this gentleman? Honestly, it's all he ever wanted was a high school diploma, and now he has one. Okay, we go from that to this being real funny. Remember the fly, the famous fly that landed on Mike Pence's head during the debate? Well, there is officially a cheeky costume for Halloween now, and guess what it is? And the Pence team says, yeah, this isn't flying well for us. Just in time for Halloween, an online shop is now selling a bug-bedecked white wig inspired by the now viral fly that landed Vice President Mike Pence's hair during the vice presidential debate. As Pence discussed Justice Breonna Taylor, the pesky insect flew onto the vice president's head and remained fixed on it for about 2 minutes, setting off critics and commenters alike. I think we all laughed at that. Now shoppers, bugged by the politician or simply delighted by the viral moment, will surely be amused by Three Wishes' new debate fly wig. Currently in stock and retailing for $49.95. Really? Somebody is trying to get rich off of this quick because they know it isn't going to last. That fly has had its 15 minutes of fame. You realize by Halloween, that fly is going to be dead. Not even going to remember. Anyways, the silver hairpiece with an attached oversized faux fly was reportedly first made available this past Thursday. According to the product page, customers are encouraged to look fly and steal the spotlight at your next party with this debate fly wig, perfect for when being a fly on the wall just won't do. Oh, yeah, so now we're going to go through all the puns now. Anyways, while a flag lapel pin is included with the purchase, a suit and plexiglass divider are not. Naturally, social media users are buzzing about the Halloween hairpiece, with one Twitter user declaring that the wig was the costume for All Hallows Eve. Yes, fly on the head. And the fly will be dead very soon. Residents of a Washington state city say a pair of bison escaped from their owner's home and went wandering through neighborhoods for the second time in 3 months. Spokane Police Department said it received a call about 8:45 in the morning this past Thursday, reporting a pair of bison were wandering loose through residential areas. Police contacted the owner of the bison, who was known to authorities after the same two animals, named Hazel and Baxter, escaped in July and wandered through 3 miles of neighborhoods before being captured. Witnesses captured photos and videos of the bison on their adventure. The witnesses said the owners arrived on the scene, took the bison home. No word if they have been punished. Moving on. A Texas Longhorn bull named Cowboy Toughchecks is now a Guinness World Record holder thanks to his 8'6" span of horns. Cowboy Toughchecks, originally bred by Bob Loomis in Overbrook, Oklahoma, before being purchased in 2017 by Richard and Jean Phillip of Fayetteville, had his horns officially measured at the Texas Longhorn Breeders Association annual horn showcase and was declared a new Guinness World Record holder. The bovine was issued a certificate for the longest horn spread on a living bull. The Phillips said Cowboy Toughcheck's horn spread was already so wide when they purchased him that they had to buy a special trailer just to make sure he would fit. They said the bull's popularity has led to a spike in requests for tours of their ranch. Of course, they all want to take the bull by the horns and make some money there. Oh, did you see that pun? Yeah, that was terrible. Give me hell for that one, if you don't mind. Another reason not to go in the ocean in Australia, or anywhere for that matter. A drone operator at an Australian beach captured video of the moment a large shark swam up to a surfer and nudged the man's surfboard. Bo Monks was operating a Surf Life-Saving New South Wales drone at Sharps Beach when he spotted a shark swimming up to professional surfer Matt Wilkinson. The video shows the shark nudging Wilkinson's board. Monks used the drone speaker to warn beachgoers to get out of the water, and the shark fled the area moments later. It sort of came out of nowhere, then went right up to Matt. It moved pretty fast. I was tracking it and then notified the lifeguards. You'd use the speaker on the drone to get everyone out of the water. Within 10 seconds, it was at the surfer, and 5 seconds later, it was gone. Monk said the drone might have scared the shark away. I'm not entirely sure why the shark decided to turn away at the last minute. It could have been something as simple as just bumping into the leg rope, or it might have been the drone. Marine creatures have been known to dart away when the drones come over. Wilkinson said he didn't realize the shark had gotten so close to him until he returned to shore and reviewed the footage. We get to see sharks a little bit out there on the surf, but that was definitely my closest encounter, and I hope it doesn't get any closer than that. Finally tonight, oh, you know what? Before we go to the final story for tonight, there's no need to surf. None. You're going to get attacked, Matt. You're going to get attacked. All right? Just like there's no need to go to Nova Scotia and Canada now, surrounded by great whites. West Coast, Washington State, all the way down to Mexico, and further south, all sharks. Best to stay on land. You cannot get eaten there unless you go up north and, a hungry grizzly bear or polar bear decides to maul you to death. But that's for a different day. Different subject. Okay? Always climb a tree. Can't climb a tree for a shark. Nope. Can't do it. A French couple who purchased what they thought was an exotic savanna cat from an online ad ended up turning the feline over to authorities when they turned out to be a tiger cub. Holy cow. Prosecutors in Le Havre, you like how I said the French there? Le Havre, Now, all the people in Ontario and Quebec are going to be like rolling their eyes at me. He's so West Coast. Le Havre said the couple encountered an online ad in 2018 offering a baby Savannah cat and a cross between a domestic cat and an African serval for sale. The couple paid about $7,000 for the kitten, but after about a week in their care, the couple suspected the feline was not a Savannah cat, which is legal to keep as a pet in France, but a Sumatran tiger, an endangered species native to Indonesia. The prosecutor said the incident sparked a 2-year investigation that culminated this week with 9 people being arrested. The couple who purchased the cat were among those arrested, but were later released by police. Authorities said animal trafficking charges are being sought in the case. Tiger cub is now in the care of the French Biodiversity Office. You know, in an office? What, are you expecting it to type out some letters? It's a cat, for goodness sake. It's a cat. You know, he's not going to fetch you coffee. No, not at all. Thought of the Day happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air because we love the audience participation around here. Today's Thought of the Day is as follows. If you could time travel into the future, where would you go and what would you want to see or know? If I were to do that, I'd like to go like 300-400 years, just to see if it does get like the Jetsons. You know, I want to see flying cars. I do. I want to see flying cars. I want to see like my great-great-great-great-grandchildren. Sure, they're just as annoying as me. Who knows? Who knows? I want to see if I've reincarnated. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. Will I recognize myself? I do not know. Marty, one of our favorite veterans who listens to this show, thank you for the clown, Marty, says, I would want to go to January 1st, 2021, so that I could be past this damn Groundhog's Day of a year we are currently living through. I think we're all in agreement with that, Marty. You know, I really do. John, 50 years would do any more. I might not understand developments. Wouldn't go anywhere. Dominic, end of the planet because we come back fearless. Chip, this Wednesday, 1:20 p.m., I want to see if my massage has a happy ending. If not, I'm canceling it. I probably shouldn't have read that, but you know what? This is why I go into these cold. Oh, thank you, Chip. John, I think I would prefer to go back in time and visit the 80s again. Doug, Saturday, October 16th, 2020. I need to know the numbers for every lotto week. Corey, I truly believe we are in end time, so I honestly wouldn't want to go to the future. I think it's only going to get worse. So negative, Corey Foote. So negative. Kevin and Kevin's beard, 2 separate entities. I would go to the birth of my great-grandchildren. I know I won't be alive to see it. Oh, that's being negative. I think you will. I think you will. Your beard has enough power to carry you over, Kevin. Gabe, I would want to know if the planet is still here. Tim, OTB or Vegas, and study the championship winners and the lotto numbers for a few weeks. Tom, I want to go into the future and see the Toronto Maple Leafs 100th anniversary since winning the last Stanley Cup. 1967 to 2067. Oh, yes. Tom, I am going on that trip with you. Leaf fans will still have their seats filled with dust on Yonge Street, waiting for that parade that is just never going to happen. Never going to happen. Barry, for me, it's simple. Far enough into the future where we're developing faster than light propulsion systems and have discovered how to tap into zero-point energy for powering our world. Brett, I'm so sick of tired of being ahead of my time. Think I'll chill in the now while the rest of the world catches up. Very nice, Brett Lewis. That's why we can't start the show without you in the YouTube chat every single night. Kira, I would go to the point in time when humans have evolved and ETs are working alongside us peacefully. How do we survive that transformation? I don't know. Metamucil? Because I think that's going to be the next hoarded item when aliens arrive. Kimberly, I would go look at how my life coaching business is doing and see how I may end up connecting to someone I've lost touch with for a few years back and see if I had to make the effort, or do we just cross paths? Double Bobby, go 1 year in the future, bring back stock market data, and go for it. Christine's heading to the future because she wants the lotto numbers. David, this depends on the nature of time. In Minority Report, precognitive psychics would see murders taking place in the hours or days before they happen. Officers from the pre-crime division would be dispatched to arrest the murderer, and the murder would never take place. Where did the precog see? Who knows? If we could change the future by learning about it in advance, where in the time stream is the future you initially learned about? How fragile is the future? How subject is it to change based on information that time travelers acquire about it? How much power do you actually have to change it? Who knows? Let's go to Krista. How do you know if you don't know who or what will still exist? Dandy in South Africa. She goes, now that's a secret. And Sherry, the lady who's going to be making our new t-shirts. I would like to know if society finally feeds the world like we should, or does it get worse? That is the thought of the day. Thank you to everybody playing on Facebook and Twitter. We'll do it all again very, very soon. And, of course, to Captain Shirk for a great SOR Newswire, which can be found on our website, along with Christopher Penczak for being just a fantastic guest, teaching us all about witchcraft and vegan witches and everything that kind of goes along with that, because it's kind of cool. We had a good show. Good show tonight. I hope you enjoy it. If you're listening to it in the archives or if you caught it live, like right now, I hope you really enjoyed tonight because it was a lot of fun. Trust me, it was a lot of fun. Seriously. Yes. And now, how about some music? Oh, yeah. Who's air guitaring to this? We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in our chat rooms on Spreaker, YouTube, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and our website. Everybody listening at home, in your cars, at work, wherever you may be. And to all the snarkers and snarkheads hanging out on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. You were all magnificent tonight. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we got room for them too. Good night.